Chapter 1678 Face Slapping, Round 3-4. Chapter 1678. Face Slapping, Round 3-4. Thus, when he lost his target, the deadly black wall took the hit at full impact. And the wall was connected to his own energy. It was as if Seven had punched himself. Rumble. The wall collapsed, and Seven spat out a mouthful of blood from the backlash. If he hadn't used the black sword to support himself at the last moment, he would have dropped to his knees. How is that possible? Sapphiro's eyes widened in disbelief. How did that happen? She ran up to Seven and stared at him. Are you a pig? You're a spiritual lord. You're a whole stage above Feng Wu. You should have killed her in one strike, but now she's escaped. How stupid can you be? Seven was already very angry, and Sapphiro's contemptuous tone only made it worse. He couldn't control his frustration, and spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood covered Sapphiro's face and hair. God! Sapphiro's hair, face, and clothes were splattered with blood, and she was furious. She stomped her foot and yelled, I'm going to report this to my brother. I'm going to tell him that you're worse than a pig. Seven's face turned livid, and he couldn't stop trembling. Sapphiro stared at Seven. Didn't you say that your deadly black wall is invincible? And didn't you say that no one can escape from your wall? Sapphiro snorted. Do you see what's happened? Feng Wu is a whole stage below you. Even she can escape from your wall. What's that wall good for? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? Seven glared at Sapphiro with bloodshot eyes. Seven felt his heart bleeding when he saw the broken wall on the ground. He finally knew how Feng Wu got away. The teleportations hadn't just been for dodging his attacks. She had another purpose. She had carefully chosen her teleportation spot each time. She had even made sure that his sword would land accurately. There were thus 6 cracks in the wall, even though they closed up right away and couldn't be seen with the naked eye. As the creator of the wall, he knew very well that they were still there. The 6 strikes didn't show at first, but after the last strike, the cracks created a hexagram. As a master in formations, she was able to escape through a hexagram formation without alerting anyone. At that thought, Seven wanted to smack his own head for his stupidity. He had hacked open an escape route for her. No wonder Sapphiro called him a pig. He felt like a pig as well. No, even pigs were more clever. Seeing how he had frozen, Sapphiro bellowed. Why are you staring at me? If you want to lash out, go kill Feng Wu. Bring me her head, and I'll kneel down and apologize to you. Seven didn't speak. He fought back the blood in his mouth, rose to his feet, and started walking. He dragged the sword behind him, creating a long furrow in the ground. He didn't seem to be walking very fast, but each of his steps took him 10 meters forward. He was indeed a spiritual lord. Would Feng Wu be able to escape? Chapter 1679, Critical Moment 1. Chapter 1679, Critical Moment 1. He was a capable man and a spiritual lord. Would Feng Wu be able to escape? Even Feng Wu didn't know the answer. After she jumped onto the horse, it bolted at an unbelievable speed before she had time to react. Clip-clop, clip-clop. The trees on both sides quickly fell away. Feng Wu felt as if she was flying. Run, run, run. Feng Wu didn't run back. Instead, she was running forward, because she still wanted to win the race. Sapphiro grew anxious when Feng Wu escaped. While Seven went after Feng Wu, Sapphiro thought that she could take her time and head for the finish line. She believed that she could win the competition even if she was on foot. That Feng Wu. Seven, you have to kill Feng Wu. Sapphiro clenched her fists and prayed in her head. The Bloodsea horse ran very fast, but it had been sick for a long time, so it couldn't maintain its stamina. When Feng Wu looked over her shoulder, she saw that Seven was chasing her. He wasn't walking very fast, but each step took him over 10 meters forward. He was closing in very quickly. 1,000 meters, 500 meters, 300 meters. He's catching us with us. Feng Wu urged the horse on as she spoke to Little Phoenix. She was able to escape the black wall because Little Phoenix had given her instructions. Little Phoenix was worried sick. He's a spiritual lord, someone too tough for you to fight against. You won't be able to withstand a single strike, said Little Phoenix. Feng Wu nodded. That was true. Inside the wall earlier, she could only run away from his attacks, and wasn't able to fight back even once. Our only hope now is to run into the mountains, said Little Phoenix. Run into the mountains, that's our only chance. Out on this plain, we're sitting ducks. Feng Wu agreed. The horse also realized how critical the situation was, and knew that they would all die if it was as lazy as before. Therefore it ran as fast as it could. They were all in this together. Whoosh! The wind felt like blades on Feng Wu's cheeks. The tenser the atmosphere was, the calmer Feng Wu became. She knew better than anyone else that if she didn't do anything, he would catch up with her in less than 5 minutes. When that happened, he wouldn't be as careless as before. Feng Wu leaned down and whispered something in the horse's ear. The horse frowned and snorted at Feng Wu, but agreed with her. Feng Wu rubbed the horse's head and whispered, I'll give you a choice when this is over. You can choose to leave or stay with me. The horse grunted arrogantly. Feng Wu stuffed a few supreme-level pills in its mouth, rubbed its head and said, Take care of yourself. They reached a corner at that moment. Feng Wu jumped off the horse and rolled into the thick growth of grass by the side of the road. She moved as fast as a streak of lightning without making a sound. But she left her robe on the horse, so from afar, it would look like she was still riding it. The Bloodsea horse picked up speed. It knew that the faster it ran, the further away it would lure the man, and the higher Feng Wu's chance of escaping. Chapter 1680 Critical Moment 2. Chapter 1680 Critical Moment 2. Soon, Seven walked past the bush which Feng Wu was hiding behind. Seven paused when he walked past it. Feng Wu held her knees and curled into a ball. She tried her best to slow down her breathing and her heartbeat. As expected, Seven didn't suspect much. He kept his gaze on the horse and ran after it. Phew! Feng Wu let out a breath of relief. Without hesitation, Feng Wu jumped to her feet and headed for the woods. The horse had lured the enemy away, but she couldn't abandon it. What's your plan? Little Phoenix asked anxiously. It wasn't as calm as Feng Wu was. Feng Wu said affirmatively. I have to save the horse. Little Phoenix stared at Feng Wu and was confused. Are you nuts? The horse finally lured the enemy away. Why are you trying to get yourself killed? Feng Wu said calmly. Do you think the horse can outrun that man? Little Phoenix shook its head. Feng Wu said. When Seven catches up with the horse and finds out that he's been fooled, do you think he won't take it out on the horse? Little Phoenix wanted to shake its head, but couldn't. Feng Wu said, The horse was ready to die for me. It realized this possibility, but it still agreed to my plan. Do you know why? Little Phoenix asked why. Feng Wu had never looked so serious. Because I told it that if it didn't stick to my plan, we would die together. But if it lured the enemy away, we could stall for a moment, and I promised that I would go back to save it. Little Phoenix said. But you? Feng Wu waved her hands. Are you trying to say that I can't even protect myself? Well, I admit that I'm not his match right now, and I can't even fend off one of his strikes. But someone else can handle him. Little Phoenix asked. But where is that person? Feng Wu remained calm and serious. She kept walking deeper into the mountains as she spoke with Little Phoenix. Can you sense a spiritual lord in these mountains? Feng Wu climbed onto a slope to look in the distance. She then narrowed her eyes. You want to mess with a spiritual lord creature? Little Phoenix almost jumped to its feet. Are you nuts? Feng Wu asked solemnly. Just tell me, can you find one or not? Little Phoenix said. When I snuck into the mountains to play when you weren't looking, I indeed saw a spiritual lord creature. It was a chimpanzee, but... It then frowned and said, But that chimpanzee isn't friendly at all. I offended it, so I don't think it will help us. Feng Wu asked, What did you do? Little Phoenix hesitated before it said, The chimpanzee just had a baby, and it wanted to feed its child some honey, but I grabbed the honey and ran. Had it not been for its baby, it would have chased me all over the mountain. Little Phoenix smiled wryly. We have a feud now. It'll want to skin me alive. I can't go looking for it. Feng Wu asked, Which direction? Little Phoenix asked. What? Fengwu asked. That chimpanzee's cave, where is it? Little Phoenix was shocked. Please don't tell me you're going to find it. Don't we have enough enemies already? Fengwu smiled. So what? An enemy can be turned into a friend. Chapter 1681 Critical Moment 3. Chapter 1681 Critical Moment 3. Little Phoenix didn't know what to say. Turn an enemy into a friend? You're so naive. Don't you know how vindictive a chimpanzee can be? Why would it become your friend? Because you're pretty? Fengwu asked, why not? Little Phoenix was speechless. Fengwu asked, the direction. Little Phoenix had no choice but to tell Fengwu. It's in the northwest. Seeing Fengwu run off in that direction without hesitation, Little Phoenix wanted to kill itself. It regretted its words, for it had only made things more complicated. The demon chimpanzee's cave was located in the core of the mountain, and it wasn't very close. But Fengwu was all about saving the horse, so she moved very swiftly. In 15 minutes, she was almost at the cave. Is it here? She asked Little Phoenix. Little Phoenix was frustrated to see Fengwu endanger her own life, but there was nothing it could do apart from give her a grumpy look. Fengwu beamed at it. What's with that look on your face? Why do you think that I'll definitely lose? You're not just 1 or 2 levels weaker. That thing is an entire stage stronger than you. Plus, magical beasts are always stronger than humans at the same level. You can't even withstand that man's strike. This chimpanzee really will kill you. You're going to die. Fengwu smiled. You've been with me for so long, and we've gone through so much danger together. Didn't everything turn out alright even though it seemed impossible at first? Little Phoenix said. But my master told me to protect you. If I don't do my job properly, I'll. Fengwu asked curiously. What will happen to you? Will you be skinned alive? Little Phoenix snorted. You have no imagination at all. Skinning is nothing in comparison. Fengwu didn't know what to say. Little Phoenix said, Fine, I know I can't stop you. If you die, I'll die with you. Fengwu chuckled. I'm like a cat. I have 9 lives. It won't be that easy to kill me. Plus, even if I have to die, I need to bring my beautiful master back first. Therefore, I cherish my life a lot more than you can imagine. I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't confident about it. Little Phoenix said, I hope so. Fengwu and Little Phoenix lay in wait outside the cave. The two of them searched the surrounding area, and Fengwu came to a conclusion. This cave has 2 openings, one in the front and one at the back. She then said solemnly, I'll find a way to lure the demon chimpanzee away. You'll then take the opportunity to run inside, grab the little chimpanzee, and run away through the other opening. Little Phoenix frowned. Why am I stealing the little one? Fengwu snapped her fingers. I have a plan. Just do it. Little Phoenix frowned and said, How about I lure the big one away, and you go steal the baby? Seeing that Fengwu wanted to say no, it went on. For one, I can fly, so the demon chimpanzee can't do anything to me. For another, the demon chimpanzee holds a grudge against me, so it'll be easier for me to get its attention. Furthermore, I can die, but you can't, thought the bird. After some hesitation and consideration, Fengwu finally said yes. As expected, Little Phoenix only showed its face and made a tiny noise before the demon chimpanzee crawled out of its cave. Fengwu hid among the thick leaves and didn't dare make a sound. Little Phoenix threw a stone at it. Ah! Chapter 1682 Face Slapping, Round 4-1. Chapter 1682, Face Slapping, Round 4-1. The demon chimpanzee had always been very erratic, and it was immediately set off by Little Phoenix's provocation. Ha ha ha, you dumbass. Chase me, I dare you. Little Phoenix threw another stone at the demon chimpanzee. The chimpanzee was furious. It was a spiritual lord, but it had just been challenged by a petty flying thing that was a mere spiritual elder. This was unacceptable. Then with a whooshing sound, Little Phoenix took off, flying as fast as it could. The demon chimpanzee smirked and ran after the bird. It was so furious that it didn't notice that a human teenage girl was hiding in the grass. Magical beasts were territorial animals, And the more powerful a beast was, the keener it was to guard its territory. The area within a 10 kilometers radius was all its territory, and no other magical beasts would dare come close. Therefore, the demon chimpanzee considered this cave to be quite safe. However, as soon as the chimpanzee dashed off, Feng Wu rushed into the cave as quickly as she could. Inside, a small demon chimpanzee studied Feng Wu with big black eyes that were filled with curiosity. "Hi." Feng Wu greeted it with a smile. The small demon chimpanzee smiled like a little angel. However, the look on its face changed when Feng Wu was close enough, and it tried to rip Feng Wu's throat open with its sharp claws. "Mom! Mom! Food!" It then attacked Feng Wu, moving as fast as a streak of lightning. It was accurate and ferocious. Feng Wu had never expected a cub to be capable of doing such a thing. She slid away, dodging the small demon chimpanzee. She then moved to a spot behind it. Thump! She thought she could punch the cub in the head, but the cub was more capable than she had anticipated. It smiled maliciously. "Trap her!" Staring at a corner of the cave, the small demon chimpanzee gave the command. Feng Wu looked up, and her pupils contracted. On the ceiling of the cave was a giant spider web. The strings were resilient, shiny, and as sharp as blades. Hearing the small demon chimpanzee's command, the spider web fell down toward Feng Wu. "Ha ha ha." The small demon chimpanzee smirked. The look on Feng Wu's face turned serious. The Bloodsea horse had lured 7 away, and Little Phoenix had caught the attention of the demon chimpanzee. Both of them were in grave danger, and their lives might be hanging in the balance. The least she could do was take care of this little chimpanzee. One of her sleeves suddenly stretched out. It then wrapped around the chimpanzee's ankle and dragged it toward the entrance. The cub was used to doing whatever it wanted in its mother's territory. It would eat whatever magical beasts it wanted and destroy anything it felt like. Its good days were over, now that it had met Feng Wu. As Feng Wu was dragging it toward the opening of the cave, the spider web fell down toward her. "Catch her!" Infuriated, the cub yelled at the demon spider. "No problem, young master," said the demon spider in excitement. Unfortunately, they had underestimated Feng Wu's speed. The moment the spider web fell, Feng Wu dashed forward as fast as she could. Whoosh! The spider web just happened to miss her. Instead, it fell on top of the small chimpanzee. Chapter 1683 Face Slapping, Round 4-2. Chapter 1683, Face Slapping, Round 4-2. "You idiot!" The small chimpanzee rolled around on the ground in frustration. Fearing that it may cause more trouble, Feng Wu struck and stuffed the demon spider into the cub's mouth. Arg! The small chimpanzee shook from head to toe in rage. The spider was so disgusting that it wanted to puke. This abominable human girl would pay for this. "My mom will eat you when she gets back." The cub jumped around and screamed furiously. Feng Wu frowned. The cub had to have some special way to contact its mother. If its cries really could bring the demon chimpanzee back, she would be in a lot of trouble. So she picked up a stone and smashed it down on the cub's head. Thump! Poor little demon. The impact immediately rendered it unconscious. Finally, everything was quiet again. Feng Wu let out a breath of relief before she contacted Little Phoenix. As soon as she called it, she heard the bird scream. "How are you doing over there?" Feng Wu asked anxiously. Little Phoenix said, This demon chimpanzee is the worst. Although it can't fly, it's really good at throwing things. It's been throwing all sorts of things at me. When it can't find anything to throw, it pulls off its hair to hurl at me. And they're like needles. Ouch. That hurts. It's anything but stupid. It's been shooting at my wings. Gosh, I can't hold on for much longer. Little Phoenix complained loudly. Feng Wu was a little relieved, for the bird wasn't severely injured. She immediately asked, "Where's the horse?" Because she didn't have a bond with the horse yet, she couldn't sense its presence. Little Phoenix, on the other hand, had an ability to sense other animals. "It's in the northwest. Just head for the west." Arg! My wing! The hair stabbed me again. The poor bird whined, and it seemed to be in grave danger. After all, it was only a spiritual elder, And the magical beast was a spiritual lord. No matter how talented the bird was, it wouldn't be able to get away. I've already caught the chimpanzee cub. Lead the big one in my direction. Luckily, they weren't too far apart, so Feng Wu and Little Phoenix could communicate with their minds. Little Phoenix had indeed almost been cornered by the demon chimpanzee, who was now sneering at the bird. Countless hairs were stuck to Little Phoenix's wings, and it was covered in blood. It landed on a tree branch and panted, and felt like it would collapse at any moment. The beast cornered Little Phoenix in a valley before it smirked and slowly approached the bird. Ha ha ha, the demon chimpanzee laughed. You're a mere spiritual elder, but you showed so much strength. I see that you're from a special bloodline. Maybe you're even one of the sacred magical beasts. Little Phoenix snorted inwardly. A sacred magical beast? I'm a divine one. I bet you're very nutritious. I may have a breakthrough after I eat you. Ha ha ha. The demon chimpanzee looked excited as it walked toward Little Phoenix. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Little Phoenix counted in its head. Chapter 1684 Face Slapping, Round 4-3. Chapter 1684 Face Slapping, Round 4-3. The bird didn't forget about the small demon chimpanzee, but it had to time it correctly. If it told the demon chimpanzee too early, the latter would go after Feng Wu and might catch up with her. So, the bird decided that it had to stall. Little Phoenix looked panic-stricken as it said, "Hey, I'm not some sacred beast. I'm a stinky one. Eat me, and you'll become very stinky. Not only will you lose all your cultivation ability, you'll be cursed as well." The demon chimpanzee laughed. Really? What curse would that be? It was standing in front of Little Phoenix now, and its giant shadow covered Little Phoenix completely. It then picked Little Phoenix up and opened its mouth. It was going to eat the bird whole. Little Phoenix realized that it couldn't stall any longer. "Hey, aren't you worried about your baby?" Little Phoenix gave it a half-smile. The demon chimpanzee suddenly froze. Little Phoenix smirked. "Did you never wonder why I provoked you out of the blue?" The demon chimpanzee stiffened. Little Phoenix said, "I have to have a death wish to simply challenge you when I know that I'm not your match." The demon chimpanzee was speechless. Little Phoenix said, "So you really didn't notice that human hidden in the bushes when I lured you out?" The demon chimpanzee's face twisted, and it glared at Little Phoenix. "I'm going to eat you," Little Phoenix said. "Go ahead, but I have a special farting ability." "Huh, did you think I was making up that stinky smell? After you eat me, you'll have a stomachache. Who will save your baby then? Someone might be skinning it alive even as we speak." The demon chimpanzee was shocked. It tossed Little Phoenix away like a piece of garbage. After that, it ran back toward its cave as fast as it could. It realized that something had gone terribly wrong when it arrived. There were signs of fighting. And even the demon spider, which it had brought back for the baby's cradle, was gone. Roar! It pounded its chest in frustration. "My baby, where are you?" Luckily, it didn't lose its head. Immediately, it dashed off to look for its baby. The small demon chimpanzee was still nursing, so the demon chimpanzee was able to follow the scent of the milk. After narrowly escaping death, Little Phoenix lay on a rock and was too exhausted to move a muscle. "Little Feng Wu, I've done everything I can. You have to stay alive." Little Phoenix had no confidence in Feng Wu's survival at all. After all, Feng Wu was being chased by a spiritual lord assassin and a spiritual lord demon chimpanzee at the same time. How could she possibly survive that? Meanwhile, Feng Wu was running as fast as she could. She knew that she was facing an impossible situation, but that only made her want to fight harder. She would become an amazing cultivator, but she just needed more time. The wind howled in her eyes as she flitted past the trees, stones, bushes, and creeks. Chapter 1685 Face Slapping Round 4-4. Chapter 1685 Face Slapping Round 4-4. Obstacles kept appearing in Feng Wu's path, but she didn't change her route and made a beeline for 7. The Bloodsea horse wouldn't last much longer. Thump, thump, thump. The ground shook. Feng Wu turned around and almost froze. It was the demon chimpanzee. It was so fast. The beast charged at her like a cannonball. It was a small black dot at first, but in a matter of seconds, she could see that it was the demon chimpanzee. Shit! Run! She could clearly sense the beast's murderous intent. Its baby had just been snatched. As a mother, it was only natural that it was furious. Feng Wu picked up speed. When she saw the demon chimpanzee, it saw her as well. It even spotted the small demon chimpanzee on Feng Wu's shoulder. Its baby. Right now the cub was curled up and not moving at all. The demon chimpanzee didn't know if its baby was still alive. Damn you, human! Damn you! The demon chimpanzee almost exploded. How dare she touch its baby? It swore that when it caught the human girl, it would skin her and roast her meat. Whoosh! 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 The demon chimpanzee yelled in frustration. The angrier it was, the faster it moved. Arg! Feng Wu grew anxious. The demon chimpanzee was moving even faster than she had anticipated. This wouldn't do. Feng Wu then found a mountain blocking her way. It had a stunning cliff that was perpendicular to the ground. It looked as if a giant blade had slashed the mountain open, and the wall was as smooth as a mirror. There was no time to run around it. Whoosh! 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 Feng Wu picked up a handful of small stones, and she threw them at the cliff. She did so as she ran toward the cliff. She made sure that there was a stone buried in the wall every dozen meters or so. Stepping onto the protruding stones, she ran all the way up the cliff. Whoosh! 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 When the stones were used up, she was standing on the top of the cliff. Turning around, she saw that the demon chimpanzee was already down below. Roar! It bellowed at Feng Wu. That abominable human! Feng Wu made faces at the demon chimpanzee. Haha, catch me if you can. She knew that with the demon chimpanzee's size, there was no way that it could climb up using her stones. It was just too huge. Don't you want your baby? It's right here. Come and get it. Resting her hands on her waist, Feng Wu jumped around. Damn it! Looking up, the demon chimpanzee saw the small stones and was frustrated. It indeed couldn't climb up. But it could try something else. Although it wasn't as nimble as Feng Wu, it was physically much stronger. At that thought, the demon chimpanzee retreated several hundred meters away. Standing on the cliff, Feng Wu looked confused. What was the demon chimpanzee doing? Soon she knew the answer. The demon chimpanzee stopped when it was 300 meters away before it charged forward again, picking up speed as it ran. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Wait, was that even possible? That demon chimpanzee wanted to knock down the cliff. It indeed wasn't attached to the rest of the mountain, but that was such a stupid choice. Rumble. Chapter 1686, Face Slapping, Round 4-5. Chapter 1686, Face Slapping, Round 4-5. Feng Wu was still wondering when the demon chimpanzee's giant body smashed into the cliff. The cliff was 1,000 meters tall, while the demon chimpanzee was only 30 meters tall. That was a huge difference. However, boom! Feng Wu felt a tremor throughout her body when the beast smashed into the cliff. Her blood seemed to boil, and she almost spat out a mouthful of blood. How terrifying this power was! Was this the true capability of a spiritual lord? It seemed that she had underestimated the beast's terrifying power. The impact created a huge crack in the cliff. Feng Wu saw it and knew that this was bad news. If she had been down there, she could have climbed up along that crack, which would be an easy feat. However, the demon chimpanzee didn't realize that it had created a path up the cliff. It backed away again before it charged forward. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Although the cliff was quite sturdy, it wouldn't be able to withstand repeated smashing. 2 more times and the cliff would collapse. How terrifying! How terrifying a spiritual lord could be. Feng Wu knew that if it caught up with her, she would be dead. At that thought, Feng Wu ran down the other side of the cliff. Whoosh! 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 She gritted her teeth and kept running. Run, run, run. Quickly. This was more dangerous than any situation she had ever faced before. She hadn't run very far before she heard a loud smashing sound behind her. Turning around, she saw the tall cliff collapse. That demon chimpanzee was so terrifying. It had crushed a cliff with sheer force. How frightening. Rocks fell down, covering the demon chimpanzee. But the beast soon crawled out from under them. It was covered with dust and had many scratches. Its glossy black fur was also filthy, but its eyes were bloodshot red with hatred. Damn you, human! After knocking the cliff over with its sheer strength, the demon chimpanzee bellowed angrily. It ran after Feng Wu. Despite the wounds, it ran even faster. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Just then, the small demon chimpanzee that was on Feng Wu's shoulder woke up and opened its eyes. When it saw its mother running after them, it was thrilled. The small demon chimpanzee shouted, "Roar!" The demon chimpanzee replied with a roar. The small demon chimpanzee said, "Oh!" The demon chimpanzee replied with a roar. Hearing how excitedly the mother and son howled at each other, Feng Wu was speechless. She smacked the small demon chimpanzee. The small demon chimpanzee tried to bite Feng Wu. Feng Wu said, "Can you stop yelling?" The small demon chimpanzee only grunted. Feng Wu said, "Here's something yummy. Eat it and stop yelling. Make another sound, and I'll smack you until you're unconscious." She then gave the small demon chimpanzee some moonfish which she had put away. On their way here to the Sino grassland, Feng Wu happened to catch quite a few of the fish. She had planned to sell them here, but had never gotten around to it. She could only hope that the chimpanzee ate fish. Chapter 1687 Face Slapping, Round 4-6. Chapter 1687, Face Slapping, Round 4-6. To Feng Wu's satisfaction, the cub stopped howling after she gave it the fish. It then ate quietly. While the demon chimpanzee was still bellowing, the small demon chimpanzee was all about eating the moonfish. Up ahead, a wide river blocked her way. The current was very fast, and there was no sign of any living creatures. One look and Feng Wu knew that it was bad news. This could only suggest one thing. There were undercurrents and a whirlpool in the water. Otherwise, the river would have some living creatures in it. However, turning around, Feng Wu saw that the demon chimpanzee was closing in, and was only 200 meters away. She would be doomed if she didn't jump into the river. Without thinking, Feng Wu jumped into the river. The small demon chimpanzee didn't know how to swim, so it started struggling as soon as it hit the water. Feng Wu was a great swimmer, but even she was almost carried into the black whirlpool by the undercurrents. The demon chimpanzee saw the human jump into the water, and was furious. Immediately, it bellowed in frustration. Roar! Crying, the small demon chimpanzee reached out toward the demon chimpanzee for help. The demon chimpanzee didn't know what to do. It had always lived on land, and had never gone into the water. But if it didn't go after the human, what about its baby? Driven by its motherly instinct, the demon chimpanzee stepped into the water. Feng Wu had thought that the undercurrents and whirlpool would hinder the beast for a while, but she had forgotten something. The river was only 20 meters deep, but the demon chimpanzee was 30 meters tall. When it stepped into the river, the water only reached its waist. The demon chimpanzee had thought that it was doomed, but it was baffled when it saw that the water only reached its waist. It was then elated. Only Feng Wu could describe how frustrated she was. Swim. Faster. She had tied the cub to her waist while she swam as fast as she could. With her keen senses, she was able to dodge the black whirlpools and undercurrents. Even so, she had visibly slowed down. But the demon chimpanzee didn't have any of those problems. Undercurrents. How could they possibly affect a creature that had just knocked down a cliff? Whirlpool. It was too small to suck in the 30-meter-tall demon chimpanzee. The demon chimpanzee flattened the whirlpool with one foot. It was unstoppable. It would stop at nothing. It would walk across the river. That was what the giant chimpanzee was doing. Feng Wu was shocked. Seeing that the demon chimpanzee was catching up with her, she was almost in tears. 300 meters. 200 meters. 100 meters. 50 meters. The distance between them grew smaller and smaller. Feng Wu knew that if she didn't come up with an idea in the next 30 seconds, she would be caught. She knew very well how much the demon chimpanzee hated her. So what should we do? Fengwu was worried sick, but at that moment, she saw a layer of something black over the surface of the river ahead of her, and it gave her the creeps. Chapter 1688 Face Slapping, Round 4-7. Chapter 1688, Face Slapping, Round 4-7. What the hell was that? Fengwu moved closer, and saw that they were river wasps. What were river wasps? Other people might not know, but Fengwu was an avid reader with a very good memory, so she recognized them. The only difference between river wasps and regular ones was that they lived in rivers. Otherwise, the two of them were pretty much the same. Fengwu's eyes lit up. She had figured out a way to handle the demon chimpanzee. Luck was indeed on her side. But where was the river wasp's hive? For her plan to work, she had to find it first. Generally speaking, the hive was the most important thing to the river wasps, and it was also where their queen lived. Therefore, it should be located in the most ideal spot. Fengwu then looked to the southeast. A willow tree stood there, and on it, a black ball the size of a hat swayed in the wind. Fengwu smiled. Great! Her luck was finally going to turn around. Roar! The demon chimpanzee moved closer and closer. 50 meters, 30 meters. It opened its mouth, and was ready to bite Fengwu. What happened next was quicker than words could describe. Grabbing the spider web with the small demon chimpanzee in it, Fengwu hurled it at the river wasp's hive. Before the cub knew what was happening, the hive was flying back toward Fengwu. When the hive flew past Fengwu's head, she made her move. Her fingers twitched, and there was a tiny flame. Meanwhile, she spun around and kicked the hive. It then flew into the demon chimpanzee's mouth. It might sound like a lot, but the whole thing took less than a second. Thus, apart from Fengwu, no one else realized what had happened. When they did, the hive was already in the demon chimpanzee's mouth. The demon chimpanzee didn't know what to say, because it had just swallowed a burning wasp hive. The cub was too busy eating the fish to care about anything else. The wasps were astonished, because their queen had just been eaten. Oh no! This was where the river wasps lived. And there were tens or even hundreds of thousands of river wasps here. There were no undercurrents or whirlpools in this part of the river, which was why the wasps had settled down here. It had never occurred to them that such a thing would happen. Rumble! The river wasp shrilled. Fengwu realized that something was about to happen. Shit! They were about to get their revenge. Fengwu was in front of the demon chimpanzee, so she would become the river wasp's first target. However, she wouldn't just stand there and let the wasp sting her. Therefore, when the swarm of wasps charged at her, Fengwu dove into the river until she was fully submerged. Water gushed into the small demon chimpanzee's mouth, but Fengwu couldn't help it right now. She swam as fast as she could. Disaster befell the demon chimpanzee. It was completely baffled. With its giant mouth, swallowing a wasp hive wasn't a problem for it at all. Chapter 1689 Face Slapping Round 4-8. Chapter 1689 Face Slapping Round 4-8. It had swallowed the hive as soon as it was in its mouth. It was as easy as a human swallowing a pill, and the hive was only a little hotter than was normal. The chimpanzee didn't think much of it at all. However, when hundreds of thousands of wasps flew toward it, the demon chimpanzee finally panicked. It finally realized that the abominable human had just fed the hive to it. Damn it! Its eyes went bloodshot red, and it wanted to catch Fengwu and skin her alive. It finally understood why that human girl dove into the river. She had it all planned out. But it couldn't tell the river wasps that this was the human girl's plan, and have the wasps get their revenge on the girl. The river wasps would never believe it. The demon chimpanzee was so frustrated that it almost lost his mind. It also wanted to dive into the river like that human girl, but it realized in frustration that even if it lay down on its back, its belly was still above the surface, because it was simply too enormous. Fengwu swam as hard as she could, and only resurfaced after she was a few hundred meters away. She could hold her breath for longer, but the small demon chimpanzee couldn't. It was almost unconscious by now. When Feng Wu picked up the small demon chimpanzee from her belt, the cub was barely breathing. Luckily, they weren't very far away from the bank. Grabbing the cub, Feng Wu swam as fast as she could. She was almost exhausted when she reached the shore, but she still tossed the cub onto the bank first before she slowly climbed out of the river. Feng Wu looked back when she was ashore and saw that the demon chimpanzee was indeed surrounded by the river wasps. The demon chimpanzee was indeed an invincible spiritual lord. But the river wasps were numerous and everywhere. Feng Wu believed that the demon chimpanzee would rather fight another spiritual lord than be surrounded by the river wasps. It couldn't chase them away, nor could it escape. It was trapped, and the wasps were stinging it all over its body. The feeling was unbearable. Feng Wu looked back at the small demon chimpanzee. It had drunk too much water, and its belly was very plump. It seemed to be in grave condition. She then looked at the demon chimpanzee, who was looking at its cub anxiously. It was a mother's natural instinct. Despite its rage, it gave Feng Wu a pleading look. It was begging Feng Wu to save its child. Feng Wu heaved a sigh. Although she didn't have much time, the cub was innocent, and Feng Wu had never meant to hurt the little guy. Fine, she would save the cub. She quickly pressed the small demon chimpanzee's plump belly. 1, 2, 3 times. The small demon chimpanzee spat out a large mouthful of water. Turning around, Feng Wu saw that the demon chimpanzee was swallowing the river wasps. Since it could neither chase them away nor escape, it simply opened its mouth and started eating them. Feng Wu admired it for its courage. Seeing that the demon chimpanzee would catch up with her soon, Feng Wu picked up the cub and started running. Whoosh, 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 quickly. Chapter 1690 Face Slapping, Round 4-9. Chapter 1690, Face Slapping Round 4-9. She talked to Little Phoenix as she ran. After getting some rest on the rock, Little Phoenix's wounds had healed a little. It panted as it said, "I'm still alive, but if you want to save that horse, you need to move faster. It's been forced onto a cliff. I'm headed there myself. Hurry up." It then sent Feng Wu a map with a flickering red dot on it through its mind. It was where the horse was trapped. Taking a deep breath, Feng Wu nodded. "I'm only 5 minutes away. I'll be there soon." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. She then dashed off. With the small demon chimpanzee, the demon chimpanzee would definitely follow her. She ran past trees, rocks, bushes, and rivers. She didn't try to hide her tracks, since there was no need to. She simply ran as fast as she could. The tracks she left behind would give the chimpanzee the direction to follow. Meanwhile, the demon chimpanzee, after it devoured about half of the river wasps, the rest were finally scared off by its imposing manner. The river wasps liked to pick on those that were weaker than them, and were good at fighting as a group, but they couldn't withstand something as terrifying as the demon chimpanzee. Other creatures could become very frantic during a fight. But the demon chimpanzee was even worse. It ate its opponents. How horrible! Although the remaining river wasps fled in fear, the demon chimpanzee didn't exactly win the battle. The wasps had surrounded it earlier. They shouldn't have broken through its defense, but the demon chimpanzee was too proud. It had pulled its hair off earlier to shoot at Little Phoenix. Sure, the hair would grow back, but it would still hurt the hair follicles. The demon chimpanzee's defense had been as seamless as steel armor before. Although the river wasps were numerous, they wouldn't be able to harm it if they couldn't breach its defense. But because of the damaged hair follicles, the demon chimpanzee was miserable. These river wasps were everywhere. They all crawled into its hair follicles. They then stung it together, and the demon chimpanzee didn't ever want to experience that prickly feeling again. Luckily, the river wasps finally retreated when the demon chimpanzee went berserk. Damn you human! The demon chimpanzee bellowed and rushed toward the riverbank. But Feng Wu and its child were nowhere to be found when it got there. Damn it, it roared. Infuriated, the demon chimpanzee lashed out. All the trees and stones by the river were smashed to pieces. But what choice did it have apart from going after Feng Wu? I'll cut you into little pieces and roast you when I catch you. I'll eat you piece by piece. The demon chimpanzee swore. What it didn't know was that the girl it wanted to grill had already set a trap for it to jump into. Feng Wu ran as fast as she could. The horse was very close. If she didn't get to it in time, everything would fall apart. Quickly, Feng Wu could see in her head that she was getting closer and closer to the red dot. Chapter 1691 Face Slapping, Round 5-1. Chapter 1691, Face Slapping, Round 5-1. She ran all the way to the cliff. And the horse was standing right on top of it. Looking down, the horse saw Feng Wu below, and its desperate eyes lit up. No matter if this human girl could save it or not, at least she had kept her word. She didn't lie, and had kept her promise. There were still honest people among humans. The horse heaved a sigh. It was glad that it could witness this for itself before it died. Feng Wu didn't know about the horse's doubts, nor was she aware that it was anticipating its death. Right now she was studying the cliff. It was a lot taller than the one which the demon chimpanzee had destroyed before. The horse would be killed by the fall if it jumped off. Moreover, the demon chimpanzee would be here soon. What should she do? Feng Wu racked her brain. Her eyes then lit up. She had an idea. Since she had used the small stones earlier, why couldn't she use them now? She gave the horse the hint, asking it to stall as long as possible, while she tried to figure things out. The horse smiled bitterly. This human girl was so naive. How could she possibly escape being chased by a spiritual lord? If it hadn't been betrayed by humans, it would never have been reduced to a spiritual elder from a spiritual lord. The horse shook its head at Feng Wu. Feng Wu was worried sick. She saw in the horse's eyes that it wanted to give up. Why wouldn't it believe her? Frustrated, Feng Wu stared at the horse and mouthed to it that she wouldn't allow it to die. She then started to set up a formation. That was the idea she had earlier. She was the best at formations, and had been making progress in this aspect faster than with her other cultivation skills. What formation should she make? It needed to be simple and quick. The dark formation then. The so-called dark formation would deplete all light until it was pitch black. Luckily, Feng Wu carried formation equipment on her, so she was able to build one in minutes. Such a formation wouldn't last more than a minute, but it was enough for Feng Wu. After the formation was set up, Feng Wu waved at the horse and gestured for it to jump down. The horse smiled bitterly. It believed that the human girl couldn't do anything about the situation. Hearing the noise, Seven was alarmed. He gripped his sword and looked over the edge of the cliff. One look, and he was excited. He had searched high and low, only to find his target when he least expected it. Seven thought at first that Feng Wu was on the horse, so he ran after it, but he only realized that he had been tricked by the girl when the horse ran up this cliff. Damn it! That girl was indeed as scheming and resourceful as the prince said. In a normal circumstance, Seven would ignore the horse to go after Feng Wu, but because he had been tricked by Feng Wu repeatedly, Seven held a lot of resentment. He wouldn't let the horse go. Hence, he chased the horse all the way up the cliff and cornered it. Now that abominable girl was right there below the cliff. It couldn't be any easier. Chapter 1692 Face Slapping, Round 5-2. Chapter 1692, Face Slapping, Round 5-2. Jump! Feng Wu threw a few stones, so that they stuck into the wall of the cliff, before she jumped up the cliff like a nimble monkey. When she was about 100 meters away from the horse, she said, "If you trust me, jump." The horse exhaled. Humans, people would always betray each other. In a critical moment like this, they would always choose to live and let their spiritual beasts take the fall. The horse had no hope left for this world. It closed its eyes and jumped off the cliff. Everyone was convinced that the fall would kill it. Seven believed so. So did the horse itself. However, thump! The horse was still falling when it felt something under its hooves, which worked as a buffer and reduced some of its falling momentum. At first, it thought that it had stepped on a passing bird. But it happened again and again. So, it definitely wasn't a coincidence. The horse opened its eyes. It saw a figure also falling down the cliff, and she was tossing stones in its direction as she fell. What? The horse was so astonished that its eyes popped out. Because as amazing as that was, it was very difficult to achieve. First of all, the person throwing the stones had to have precise judgment about its weight, the wind direction, the position, and the speed. Otherwise, the stones would be off course. More importantly, she needed to fall with it and match its falling speed. That was impossible to do. However, the horse watched as the human girl, whom it thought had betrayed it, fell with it 20 meters away. She was watching its hooves nervously. She was already very pretty, and when she turned serious, she looked stunning in the sunlight. How did she do it? The horse couldn't for the life of it figure it out. It wasn't alone. Up on the cliff, 7 was confused as well. He had thought that the horse would die from the fall, but things took a different turn. 7 stared at Feng Wu with his cold eyes. He had thought that his teenage girl from the Zhenhua Empire was only a common girl slightly better than Sapphiro, but during their brief confrontation, she had changed his opinion of her over and over again. She was a very clever girl, and according to the oldest prince, she had to die. The murderous intent in 7's eyes became more obvious. Feng Wu, do you think you can get away just like that? Unfortunately for you, a spiritual lord is more powerful than you think. 7 walked to the edge of the cliff and jumped down. The horse needed the stones to slow down its fall, but 7 didn't need anything like that. Whoosh! The sound of him falling ripped through the air. When the prince's assassin plummeted, he fell so fast that the others didn't have time to react. Therefore, 7 landed when Feng Wu and the horse were still in the air. Thump! 7 fell into the dark formation Feng Wu had designed. The horse looked down at the bottom in despair. It shook its head at Feng Wu. It was all for nothing. Chapter 1693 Face Slapping Round 5-3. Chapter 1693 Face Slapping Round 5-3. The killer was waiting for her down below. However, Feng Wu smiled a little. The horse looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment, because she looked so calm and satisfied. Why? It soon knew what that smile meant. Feng Wu was able to see very far when she was halfway up the cliff, so she saw that the demon chimpanzee was charging at them. Right now, she and the horse were only a few hundred meters above the ground. The timing was perfect. What happened next was quicker than words could describe. Feng Wu pulled the small demon chimpanzee from the net she had been carrying, and made a light cut on its belly. She said sorry to the cub before hurling it at 7. Master, you told me to catch the small demon chimpanzee to help with your cultivation. Here it is. I'd love my reward now. Feng Wu was so loud and clear that anyone within a kilometer could hear her, including the demon chimpanzee. After 7 fell into the dark formation, he was surrounded by such darkness that he couldn't see his own hand. He heard what Feng Wu said, but he didn't think that she was talking to him, so he didn't reply. Feng Wu made sure that everything came together perfectly. She yelled those words when she threw down the cub right when the demon chimpanzee arrived. It watched as its cub was tossed down, and it heard what the human girl said. So the man in black was behind everything. How dare this human master try to eat its precious baby for his cultivation? That was unacceptable. The demon chimpanzee was furious. Immediately, it diverted all its hatred for Feng Wu to 7. Because it believed that although the human girl was the one who did it, she was only following orders, and the man in black was the real bad guy. The demon chimpanzee was as tall as 30 meters, so it was able to catch the cub when it was still in the air. And it saw the blood in its palm. Damn you! The demon chimpanzee's eyes went bloodshot red, and it was filled with hatred. Honey, stay put in my ear. The demon chimpanzee stuffed its cub into its ear, and the next second, it jumped at 7. 7 couldn't see anything in the dark formation, so he had no idea that Feng Wu had framed him. Until the demon chimpanzee struck down with its palm. The fury of a spiritual elder was terrifying. Sensing the danger, 7 stepped back. Even so, the wind still caught him and bushed the mask off his face. At the same moment, Feng Wu Feng Wu had to stop the two of them from falling after the demon chimpanzee showed up. She caught the horse with a rope and pulled it toward the cliff. After seeing this, the horse looked at Feng Wu in amazement. It hadn't seen this coming. Chapter 1694 Face Slapping, Round 5-4. Chapter 1694, Face Slapping, Round 5-4. This human girl had calculated everything, from falling off the horse and grabbing the cub, to lure the demon chimpanzee here to the jump, and the trap for the man. It was like a chess game. Everyone else was a chess piece, and the human girl was the player. You! The horse wanted to speak, but Feng Wu silenced it with a hand gesture. She said carefully, "We're not entirely out of danger now. I know you have questions, but we can talk after we get out of here." Down below, the effect of the dark formation had worn off, but Seven and the demon chimpanzee were already in a fierce battle. Seven didn't want to fight, but the demon chimpanzee had suffered on its way here, not to mention the river wasps, which it would never forget in its lifetime. Therefore, it wouldn't let Seven go. Feng Wu knew that the fight would last for a while. While those two were still fighting, Feng Wu and the horse quietly climbed up the cliff. Thanks to the stones she had stuck in the wall earlier, the climb was difficult, but not impossible. Looking up, Seven saw them ascending and was furious. He yelled at Feng Wu, "Where do you think you're going?" But the demon chimpanzee wouldn't let him go. He wanted to go after Feng Wu, but the beast was chasing him. Moreover, although they were of the same level, a magical beast was a lot stronger than a human. Therefore, Seven was having a hard time defending himself. Feng Wu feigned a worried look when she told Seven, "Master, I carried out your order. Please don't worry about the reward. I'll go find you some help now." She then dashed off with the horse. Poor Seven. He had been hopelessly trapped. Phew. 5 minutes later, Feng Wu and the horse finally reached the top of the cliff. Feng Wu sighed in relief and realized that her forehead was covered with sweat. She had been very tense the entire time, and only now did she realize that she was sore all over. Every muscle in her body hurt. "Hop on." Standing at the edge of the cliff, the horse glanced at Feng Wu. Feng Wu looked at the horse. "Teehee, do you recognize me as your master now?" The horse raised its chin and said proudly, "Do you think it's so easy to gain my recognition?" Feng Wu murmured, "So that's a no." The horse was sorry to see the girl lower her head and look so pitiful. It wondered if it had been too harsh. "Hey." The horse glanced at Feng Wu. "I still don't trust you, but I let you ride on my back, don't I?" Feng Wu looked at it with teary eyes. "So, do you still not trust me?" The horse shifted and looked away. "You can't build up trust in one go." Feng Wu agreed with it. One look and she could tell that the horse had been hurt before, and probably by a human. Of course it wouldn't trust her right away. It wouldn't even talk to her at first, so this was already big progress. "All right." Feng Wu jumped onto the horse. "You can trust me just a little now, but you have to stay with me. This way, you'll have more time to build up your trust in me." Chapter 1695 Face Slapping, Round 5-5. Chapter 1695, Face Slapping, Round 5-5. Feng Wu rubbed the horse's head as she spoke. "Humph." The horse raised its chin proudly, but it didn't refuse Feng Wu's affectionate behavior. This human girl didn't seem so bad after all, thought the horse. "Come, let's go get little Phoenix." Feng Wu waved her fist and made a forward gesture. The horse did as it was told, and headed in the direction indicated by Feng Wu. Now that Seven and the demon chimpanzee were no longer after her, Feng Wu relaxed and was curious about the horse's past. And she was the type of person who would ask bravely when she was curious. "Hey, hey." She poked the horse's ear with a finger. The horse rolled its eyes. "What?" Feng Wu asked. "Were you abandoned before?" The horse immediately stiffened when it heard the question. Feng Wu said, "What? I'm just chatting. I've been hurt before as well, and I lost all my ability and became useless. I regained my cultivation ability, though, and got everything back. If you live long enough, you'll run into some scumbags. Just get used to it." So this human girl had been betrayed before as well, thought the horse. Other people might not think much about Feng Wu's words, but the horse could empathize, because it had experienced a similar thing before. Because of that, it involuntarily trusted Feng Wu a little more. If its trust in Feng Wu had only been 1% at first, after jumping off the cliff, it rose to 40%. With the empathy, it had just increased to 50%. Feng Wu didn't know about the impact which her words had on the horse as she went on. Other people may betray you or sacrifice you, but I won't. Just remember, no matter how dangerous it is, I'll come back for you. You should never give up your life because you've lost hope, understand? You almost did something very stupid back there. She patted the horse's head. The horse snorted. Feng Wu said, I bet your old master wasn't as pretty, clever, or talented as I am, right? The horse couldn't take it anymore, and it mumbled, She's not as pretty as you are, but she's more capable. Embarrassed, Feng Wu said, Hey, you're my horse now. Why are you taking other people's side? The horse snorted. Not yet. Feng Wu was embarrassed again. You're so unruly. When you become mine, I'll teach you a lesson, humph. The horse was glad to see Feng Wu like this. Back then, its master was also a pretty girl, but she would never speak to it in such an affectionate way. She was always cold, condescending, and authoritative. Seeing that the horse was lost in its thoughts, Feng Wu was even more curious. Hey, what's your old master like? Is she really so much better than me? Feng Wu pouted. Yes, she's a lot better than you. The horse snorted. Feng Wu wouldn't believe it. That's not possible. The horse said, She's about your age, but she's a spiritual lord already. Feng Wu asked seriously. Chapter 1696, Face Slapping, Round 5-6. Chapter 1696, Face Slapping, Round 5-6. The horse nodded. Yes, she's very talented and very hardworking. She gained the sect master's favor by working very studiously. All the senior and junior brothers of the sect like to be around her as well. Feng Wu tilted her head and gave it some thought. She was at least one of the best cultivators among people of her age, if not the best. Are you sure she's from the Zhenwu Empire? The horse was very certain. Yes. I've never set foot outside the Zhenwu Empire. Feng Wu rubbed her chin. That's strange. She's more amazing than me and belongs to a sect. She doesn't like red dresses like you do, all fancy and shiny. She's unapproachable and graceful. She wears blue all the time. And she looks almost otherworldly. The horse recalled its good old days. A spiritual lord, a popular disciple in her sect, and she wore blue with an ethereal air to her. Feng Wu had a candidate for that. But could it be such a coincidence? Feng Wu looked at the horse. Don't tell me she has true phoenix blood. The horse suddenly turned its head and stared at Feng Wu in astonishment. How do you know that? How do I know? Feng Wu didn't know whether to laugh or to cry. How can I not know? She was the one who destroyed my true phoenix blood back then and rendered me useless. How can I not know? She just didn't expect that it would be such a coincidence. This used to be her horse. The horse stopped suddenly and looked back at Feng Wu. Are you telling the truth? Feng Wu smiled wryly. What do you think? The horse lowered its head. So, I wasn't the first one she betrayed. Feng Wu chuckled. No, you weren't the first, and you definitely won't be the last. She wanted to ask what Zhuo Qingwan had done to turn it into such a self-castigating creature. But seeing the horse's sad expression, Feng Wu knew that she had to let it think through things itself. But how interesting. It had never occurred to Feng Wu that it would be Zhuo Qingwan. There was silence after that. Even the air felt still. Just then, Feng Wu felt something land on her shoulder. She laughed when she saw what it was. Little Phoenix was back. For as long as Feng Wu could remember, Little Phoenix had always been conscious of its appearance. According to the bird itself, it was a graceful, respectable, and noble bird. How could it be as filthy as the rest of the stupid birds? Therefore, Little Phoenix had always kept itself well-groomed and preened all the time. But now, poor bird, it was covered in blood from all its wounds, and its precious feathers were all disheveled. It looked like it had been through a hurricane. Are you all right? Feng Wu patted the bird. Little Phoenix looked from Feng Wu to the horse and couldn't believe its eyes. What are you doing? Why aren't you running? Are you waiting for that man and the demon chimpanzee to kill you? Feng Wu chuckled. She didn't give an answer, and only pointed at the cliff. Little Phoenix had a look and was surprised. It then stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. Are they fighting? Feng Wu nodded. Little Phoenix looked surprised. The villains are fighting each other? Chapter 1697 Face Slapping, Round 5-7. Chapter 1697. Face Slapping, Round 5-7. Feng Wu nodded with a smile. Little Phoenix was so excited that it almost jumped up. But how? Weren't they busy chasing you? Why are they fighting each other now? Hey, little Feng Wu, you did it, right? Feng Wu raised her chin. Who else? Little Phoenix was enlightened. I see. You've been planning this ever since you jumped off the horse, haven't you? Feng Wu gave no reply. Little Phoenix was speechless. My master indeed chose the right person. Little Phoenix was amazed. It was all thanks to Feng Wu's plan. Otherwise, they would all have been killed. Feng Wu looked perplexed. Your master's chosen person? She found that an odd expression. Ahem. Little Phoenix wasn't going to tell Feng Wu the truth yet. It crossed its wings and gave Feng Wu a proud look. Kiddo, you shouldn't be proud just because you won this round. Kiddo? Feng Wu rubbed its head, ruffling its feathers. Hey! Frustrated, Little Phoenix stared at Feng Wu as it dodged her hand. Behave like a young lady, will you? This is very inappropriate. Feng Wu chuckled when she saw the look on Little Phoenix's face. The horse remained silent the whole time. It watched enviously as Feng Wu and Little Phoenix bantered with each other. It used to have a master, but she had always been aloof, serious, and authoritative. To her, it was always a subordinate and never a companion. The envious look in the horse's eyes became more and more obvious. Jealous, Little Phoenix stuck out its chest proudly when it saw the look in the horse's eyes. The horse was equally proud, so it rolled its eyes at the bird. Humph. It then hid all its emotions. Jealous? Not at all. What was there to be envious about? Humph. Little Phoenix looked at the horse in resignation. It was so obvious that the horse felt very envious, but it just wouldn't admit it. The bird snorted. Really? Don't deny it. You're obviously being shy about it. No, I'm not. The horse flicked its tail and decided to ignore the talkative bird. Oh, you so are. Look, you're blushing. Teehee, it's actually really easy. Just have her as your master. The bird wrapped its wings around the horse's neck, behaving like its best buddy. The horse snorted and ignored the bird. Little Phoenix said, Hey, don't ignore me. I'm showing you mercy by sharing my status with you. How can you sneer at me? You dishonest, lousy horse. Little Phoenix's childishness seemed to have infected the horse, and it blurted out, You're a lousy bird. Little Phoenix said, Lousy horse. The horse said, Lousy bird. Little Phoenix said, Lousy horse. Their squabble gave Feng Wu a headache, and she had to silence both of them. That's enough, both of you. You're spiritual beasts, for heaven's sake. Can't you hear how childish you sound? Little Phoenix crossed its wings. Humph. Chapter 1698, Face Slapping, Round 5-8. Chapter 1698. Face Slapping, Round 5-8. The horse lowered its head, looking dejected. It then mumbled, I'm not a spiritual beast. Little Phoenix rolled its eyes at the horse. You dummy. The horse said, Just because you're one doesn't mean you can insult me. Little Phoenix said, You're the biggest dummy ever. The horse said, You. Feng Wu rubbed her forehead and wondered why the two of them wouldn't stop fighting. What was their problem? Feng Wu smiled wryly. You may not be a spiritual beast yet, but you won't stay this way forever. The horse didn't quite understand her meaning. It tilted its head and gave it some thought. It wouldn't stay this way forever. That was to say, it might have a chance to become a spiritual beast one day. How's that possible? It stopped and stared at Feng Wu in wonder. That's never going to happen. Feng Wu said, Really? Why? The horse stared at Feng Wu with angry eyes. I know you want to tame me and bond with me, but you can't do it through deception. I thought for a while that you were a good person, but you're a liar. Humph. Before Feng Wu could speak, little Phoenix flared up. It stared at the horse, so mad that it wanted to hit it. What's your problem? When did Xiao Wu lie to you? How is she a liar? Explain yourself, or I'm going to slap you. The horse snorted. When did she lie to me? Everybody knows that a magical beast's talent is determined at birth. The bloodline can't change. I've been a holy beast since I was born, so how can I become a spiritual beast one day? Humph. If you want to lie to me, at least use a better excuse. You're just trying to fool me. I thought you were different from my previous owner, but you're just the same. She used to lie to me like that as well. Feng Wu finally knew why the horse suddenly lost its temper. It had been lied to, betrayed, and abandoned by Zhuo Qingwan before. That was why it had such a reaction. Little Phoenix didn't know about the horse's story, so it asked Feng Wu, who was his previous master. Feng Wu said, Zhuo Qingwan. Wow! Little Phoenix cried out and said in disbelief. What a coincidence! Feng Wu smiled wryly. Yes, what a coincidence! Little Phoenix glared at the horse. It makes sense if your former master was Zhuo Qingwan, because she's a bad person. She's been vile and ruthless since she was little, so it's only natural that she lied to you. How could you have followed her? Gosh, you have my sympathy. Those words were like little daggers stabbing into the horse's chest. The horse was frustrated, but it couldn't hit the flying bird, so it could only run as fast as it could like a streak of lightning. Feng Wu had to grip the reins to keep herself on the horse's back. She cast a stern look at little Phoenix. You shouldn't have humiliated it like that. The bird covered its beak and nodded. Somehow, that only made the horse angrier. Little Phoenix said, but if I don't say that, it'll never move on. With its disposition, it'll frustrate itself to death. Feng Wu said, you do know it can hear you, right? Chapter 1699 Face Slapping, Round 5-9. Chapter 1699 Face Slapping, Round 5-9. Little Phoenix said, it'll only move on and get rid of its pain if it joins us and signs the master pet contract with you. Feng Wu thought, can we stop talking about it for a while? The horse bellowed as it ran. I'll never sign such a contract. Not in a million years. After this is over, we'll go our separate ways, and I'll never see you again. Humph. Seeing that it had made the horse even angrier, the bird winked at Feng Wu. Feng Wu rolled her eyes and told it to shut up. The longer it spoke, the more wrong things it would say. Suddenly Feng Wu frowned. Wait, I think I hear something ahead of us. The horse had been running in a frenzied state, and Feng Wu had no idea where it was taking them. Little Phoenix listened carefully and said, I think I hear the sounds of fighting. But the horse was running so fast that the wind filled their ears. They couldn't tell what it really was. Little Phoenix told the horse, Hey, stop running. You're not helping at all. Although it was still mad, the horse didn't forget its real job, so it stopped panting angrily. Feng Wu was about to rub its head to appease it, when Little Phoenix cried out. Stop! Feng Wu looked at Little Phoenix in bewilderment. Little Phoenix flapped its wings and said angrily, You're not allowed to pet it. Feng Wu was utterly baffled. What? Little Phoenix said, This is a war between the two of us. As my master, you're not allowed to interfere. You must stay neutral. Feng Wu cleared her throat uneasily. Crossing its wings and raising its tail, Little Phoenix said, If you pet it, I'll be mad at you. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. She wondered why all her pets were so self-opinionated. When she looked at the horse, it only flicked its tail. She had no choice but to give in. Fine. I'll leave it to you, but that's an internal strife. So can we put it aside for a while? We'll get back to it after we solve the external problem and get ourselves to safety. Okay. Feng Wu looked from the bird to the horse. Little Phoenix glanced at the horse proudly. Fine. I don't know about the horse though. The proud horse couldn't stand such provocation, so it smirked and said, Of course I can do that as well. Feng Wu let out a breath of relief. She had a feeling that things would be a lot more interesting around her from now on, but she would also get headaches quite often. As for the possibility that the horse wouldn't sign the contract, and would leave her. She never considered it. She wanted this spiritual pet, and it wasn't going anywhere. Moreover, it had been abandoned by Zhuqingwan. She couldn't wait to see the day when she transformed the horse into an amazing spiritual beast and showed it to Zhuqingwan. Just the thought of that made Fengwu smile. Why are you smiling? Little Phoenix looked at its master in confusion. Its master was smiling like a little fool, and Little Phoenix didn't know where to begin to vent its sarcasm. Ahem. Fengwu covered her embarrassment by clearing her throat, and she quickly changed the subject. That sound came from the northeast, right? Little Phoenix flew up to a tall tree so that it could see further ahead. Chapter 1700 Face Slapping, Round 6-1. Chapter 1700, Face Slapping, Round 6-1. The noise is indeed from the northeast. Two groups of people are fighting, and it's getting very intense. Little Phoenix told Fengwu as it observed the situation. Wait, the side that's gaining ground is a group of men in black. Men in black. Fengwu's eyes lit up. What traits do they have, these men in black? Fengwu asked. They're all wearing black headbands over their foreheads, said Little Phoenix. There was a brooding look in its eyes as it studied the scene. It then scratched its head and said, I think I've seen these men somewhere before. Black headbands. Ah. Fengwu smacked her forehead. Wasn't Seven wearing a black headband? Little Phoenix looked at Fengwu with a strange look in its eyes, and Fengwu nodded solemnly. Little Phoenix asked, So they're with the oldest prince? Fengwu nodded. Little Phoenix smacked the branch. So the person who's been chasing us everywhere is the oldest prince's man. This is a happy coincidence. Let's kill them. It then tried to head for the spot where the noise was coming from. But Fengwu stopped it. Wait. Little Phoenix glared at her. What are we waiting for? That prince almost got all of us killed. This is an opportunity too great to miss out on. Fengwu was lost for words. The problem is, can you defeat them? Little Phoenix was rendered speechless. Fengwu said, Seven alone was enough to make us run for our lives. What do you think all the men in black will do? Little Phoenix said, They're not as capable as Seven. I don't think they're spiritual lords. Fengwu asked, What are they then? Little Phoenix said, I think they're level 3 to 5 spiritual elders, but their leader is about Seven's level. Hey, they're going after a group of people in white, and the white side is coming our way. Little Phoenix was very realistic. It did some maths and realized that they really couldn't fight all those people. So it said proudly, Where there's life, there's hope. Just because we can't win now doesn't mean that we can't defeat them in the future. We can leave now and deal with them later. Fengwu asked, Where on earth did you learn to talk like that? Stop making excuses. Little Phoenix didn't try to retort. So are we leaving or not? Fengwu said, Even if I wanted to, I can't. Little Phoenix looked confused. Fengwu smiled wryly. I broke through my bottleneck when I was fighting the demon chimpanzee just then. If I don't find a place to release that spiritual essence and make a breakthrough, it'll be a big problem. Little Phoenix asked, Is it that bad? Fengwu smiled wryly. Yes, that bad. Little Phoenix asked, Can you run? Fengwu said, If something goes wrong when I'm running, I could lose my spiritual essence or even go berserk. Little Phoenix was speechless. Other people can suppress their spiritual essence. Why can't you? Fengwu said, I've suppressed it for so long that it'll be a big explosion. I need to let it out or I'll die. Little Phoenix scratched its head in frustration. What are you going to do? Looking around, Fengwu said, You guys go now. I'll find somewhere to hide until the fight blows over. Little Phoenix said, I'll stay. Fengwu wanted to say something, but Little Phoenix said, I can hide with you. I won't make any sound or cause you any trouble. I can also protect you in critical moments. Anyway, I'm not leaving. Chapter 1701 Face Slapping, Round 6-2. Chapter 1701. Face Slapping, Round 6-2. Since Little Phoenix was so persistent, there was nothing Fengwu could say. She then looked at the horse. The look on its face was complicated. It didn't speak, and only gazed at Feng Wu with a serious look in its eyes. It seemed angry but expectant at the same time. Feng Wu heaved a sigh. You can go now. The horse looked frustrated as it stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu patted its head. After all, we haven't signed any contract yet. And I already owe you a lot from before. I can't bring you any more danger. You can leave now. Be safe. The horse glared at Feng Wu. It was very pissed. Little Phoenix stood on Feng Wu's shoulder and said happily, Look, you're not even qualified to fight alongside Xiao Wu. You poor thing. Feng Wu threw a dirty look at Little Phoenix. Would this bird ever shut up? The horse rolled its eyes at Little Phoenix, turned around and dashed off. Seeing that the horse really left, Little Phoenix was displeased once again. It told Feng Wu, Look, it left its master at a critical moment. What kind of horse is that? I'm your most trustworthy ride. Feng Wu was rendered speechless by the bird. The horse ran off. It had no idea what it was angry about, nor did it have any idea why it felt so awful. It thought it was going to explode. Before it went around a bend in the road, it turned around and saw Feng Wu and Little Phoenix digging up stones from the ground as they spoke together. It was quite a touching scene. The horse bit its lip and watched. That lousy bird wasn't a good worker at all. It was so lazy. There were so many stones, and it was picking them up one at a time. That would take forever. The horse couldn't stop thinking about how it would handle the job. Humph. However, the human girl didn't try to stop it. Tears welled up in the horse's pretty eyes, and before it knew it, there was a wronged expression on its face. Feng Wu didn't see any of that. Right now she was setting up a formation. She didn't think she could kill those people. All she wanted was to stay out of their sight, so that she could make her breakthrough. Soon, she found an underground cave a short distance away. It was no bigger than 10 square meters in size, and the opening was over 10 centimeters above ground. Luckily, Feng Wu was petite. Anyone else wouldn't be able to fit inside. After setting up a concealment formation, Feng Wu picked up Little Phoenix and jumped into the cave. Concealment was her forte, and she had wiped clean all her tracks before she entered the cave. Almost as soon as she hid herself, she heard hasty footsteps. Thump, thump, thump. It was then followed by the clash of blades. There was a giant rock over her head with a small opening that she had sealed up. She didn't have the energy to care about anything else right now. To her, the most important thing now was her breakthrough. Inside her, streaks of spiritual essence gathered into golden balls and dripped into her dantian. The spiritual essence then escaped and flowed all over her body through her energy channels. Feng Wu felt herself burning up, and she felt like she was being ironed out. Every part of her hurt. Chapter 1702 Face Slapping, Round 6-3. Chapter 1702. Face Slapping, Round 6-3. Other people would have passed out from the pain. Even if they didn't, they would have cried out in pain. But Feng Wu wasn't just anyone. She fought as hard as she could to not make a sound. But if there were other people around, they would see the sweat rolling down her forehead. Her clothes were all soaking wet, as if she had been in the water. Water kept trickling down from her clothes to the ground. The pain made Feng Wu's head go blank. It felt worse than ever. Little Phoenix didn't go back into the ring space. It was worried that if it did, it might not be able to come out when Feng Wu was in danger. Hence, it sat on top of a wall 10 meters away. A rock protruded out of the cliff at a concealed angle. Little Phoenix listened carefully for any sounds in the surrounding area, as it watched over Feng Wu. Luck wasn't on Feng Wu's side. When the men in black chased the men in white, they just happened to stop in the nearby area. Thump, 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 clang, clang, clang. Little Phoenix grew more wary as it listened to the sound of clashing weapons. It then looked at Feng Wu and saw that the noise was indeed affecting her. She frowned and nearly misguided her spiritual essence. Little Phoenix's pupils contracted, and it made up its mind. It bit its tongue and sprayed the blood in the air. It then drew a circle around Feng Wu with the blood. It was a soundproof barrier, and it could only be made by the blood from the tip of its tongue. That was very precious blood, and Little Phoenix wouldn't use it lightly. Given the current situation, however, it had no other choice. Plus, it had a premonition. If it didn't screen the noise, Fengwu would be significantly affected. She wouldn't necessarily go berserk, but her progress wouldn't be very fast either. According to its master, the more painful a breakthrough, the higher the level. Since Fengwu was in so much pain this time, did it mean that she would advance more than one level? Buzz! While Little Phoenix was nervously guarding Fengwu, she made a breakthrough. Spiritual essence rose out of the ground and gathered around Fengwu. The white spiritual essence wrapped her up like a cocoon. All her pores were open, so the spiritual essence was able to enter her body and rush into her dantian. Little Phoenix stared nervously at Fengwu while she made her breakthrough. Was it only going to be one level? But one level was already very good news. Little Phoenix kept telling itself that, when it saw Fengwu frown again. Oh my! Little Phoenix held its breath and looked at Fengwu in excitement. It was like having a baby. Giving birth to one was hard work, but twins would be a pleasant surprise. Meanwhile, Little Phoenix watched Fengwu in excitement and prayed quietly. Please make it 2 levels, please. Little Phoenix prayed wholeheartedly. Rumble. A rumbling sound filled the cave. Luckily, Little Phoenix had set up the barrier before. Otherwise, the fighters outside would definitely have noticed. Seeing that Fengwu was making a second breakthrough, Little Phoenix almost jumped to its feet. Chapter 1703 Face Slapping, Round 6-4. Chapter 1703, Face Slapping, Round 6-4. Seeing that Fengwu really was going to make a second breakthrough, Little Phoenix almost jumped to its feet. Roar. OMG. She really had a second breakthrough. Little Phoenix had only been speculating wildly. Little Phoenix flew very excitedly around Fengwu in circles. Had it not been for the enemy outside, it would have laughed out loud. Time slowly went by. Fengwu finally finished her second breakthrough. Little Phoenix heaved a sigh of relief. After this breakthrough, the difference in Fengwu and Zhuoqingwan's cultivation levels wouldn't be so great anymore. Zhuoqingwan was so intolerable that Little Phoenix wanted Fengwu to advance as fast as possible, so that she could kick that Zhuoqingwan's ass. However, when Little Phoenix thought that Fengwu was going to open her eyes, it stared at Fengwu in disbelief. What was going on here? She had had 2 breakthroughs, so why did she still seem to be in a lot of pain? It was as if her breakthrough wasn't over yet. The next second, rumble. There was the sound of a breakthrough again. Little Phoenix was astonished. This time, it was so excited that it almost lost its mind. It stared at Fengwu with unblinking eyes. How was that even possible? How could that happen? After 2 breakthroughs in a row, Fengwu still wasn't done? OMG, Little Phoenix couldn't believe what it was seeing. It forgot to blink. Given Little Phoenix's special background, it had seen all sorts of things before, but never had it seen someone make 3 breakthroughs in a row. It wondered if it was dreaming. When Fengwu opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was the astonished look on Little Phoenix's face. After the breakthrough, Fengwu felt as if she had soaked in spiritual water. A pleasant feeling flowed through her body, and she felt great. Hey, what's wrong with you? Fengwu gave Little Phoenix a strange look. Little Phoenix was speechless. Baffled, Fengwu waved her hand in front of its face. Hey, are you alright? Why do you look stunned? Little Phoenix finally returned to itself. Looking at Fengwu, it wanted to say something, but all words failed it. Fengwu grew anxious. She grabbed the bird and shook it. Hey, did something happen when I had my breakthrough? Little Phoenix nodded. Fengwu asked, are you hurt? Little Phoenix shook its head. Fengwu asked, is the horse dead? Little Phoenix shook its head. Fengwu was relieved. What then? Little Phoenix asked. You have no idea at all. Fengwu was confused. What should I know? Little Phoenix gave her an indescribable look. What level are you now? Fengwu mumbled. I was a level 4 spiritual elder before, so after the breakthrough. Gosh. She suddenly raised her head and looked at Little Phoenix in disbelief. Little Phoenix nodded at Fengwu. Feng Wu couldn't believe it and she murmured, "This can't be. I only made a breakthrough. Maybe not once but twice. Why am I a level 7 spiritual elder now? Is it a mistake?" Chapter 1704 Face Slapping, Round 6-5. Chapter 1704. Face Slapping, Round 6-5. Little Phoenix almost laughed. "A mistake? The spiritual essence is right inside you. Do you think it's a mistake?" Feng Wu rubbed her nose. "Well, you're right. But I only remember 2 breakthroughs." Little Phoenix gave Feng Wu a strange look. "You were unconscious the 3rd time." Feng Wu was amazed. "I could do that while I was unconscious." Little Phoenix said, "That's right. I was going to ask you that. How did you make a breakthrough while you were unconscious?" Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Little Phoenix let out a breath of relief, and still sounded unconvinced. "For as long as I've lived, this is the first time I've ever seen something like this. 3 breakthroughs in a row isn't even the most surprising part. You fainted, but you woke up without losing your mind. Instead, you made a breakthrough. Little Feng Wu, are you even human?" Feng Wu didn't know what to say. She wanted to know the answer as well. This was the first time she had ever experienced such an incredible thing. "I'm a level 7 spiritual elder now?" Feng Wu looked amazed. She then murmured to herself, "I'm a level 7 spiritual elder now? I really am." Little Phoenix nodded. Thanks to the soundproof barrier, the people outside couldn't hear her. Rising to her feet, Feng Wu walked around in the red circle, murmuring to herself as she walked, "I'm a level 7 spiritual elder now? I am." Little Phoenix was speechless. This woman is out of her mind. Feng Wu grabbed the bird in excitement. "Do you remember? We were told last time that Swordsmanship is a level 7 spiritual elder as well. That is to say, I'm her level now. I'm amazing. I caught up with her after 5 years." Feng Wu still couldn't believe it. Little Phoenix looked at her in bewilderment. "It's like you said, we heard it last time. You've made quite the big improvement during this time. But Zhuo Qingwan is also very talented. I'm sure she's made some breakthroughs as well." Feng Wu said, "Even if she has, it can't have been faster than mine. The difference between us is shrinking even as we speak." Little Phoenix nodded. Feng Wu was correct about that. "I'm a level 7 spiritual elder now. OMG. I opened my eyes, and I'm a level 7 spiritual elder." Feng Wu patted her head. Little Phoenix was speechless. "Wait, what's this?" Feng Wu pointed at a white jade bowl on the ground, and looked at Little Phoenix in bewilderment. Little Phoenix just looked at Feng Wu in silence. Feng Wu asked, "Why are you looking at me like that?" Little Phoenix wanted to say something, but it sighed and kept silent. Baffled, Feng Wu said, "Hey, if you have something to say, say it. It worries me to see you like this." Little Phoenix said, "This is spiritual liquid. It escaped you when you made your breakthroughs. I absorbed those that dissipated into the air, and I put the liquid part into this bowl." And then, Feng Wu looked at the bird innocently. Little Phoenix threw back its head. "Aren't you the luckiest girl in the world?" Feng Wu said, "If you didn't say that, I would still think I'm the most unlucky person in the world." Little Phoenix asked, "Do you know why it's so hard to make 3 breakthroughs in a row?" Feng Wu said, "Tell me then." Little Phoenix said, "Because only those with the greatest talent can do it. It proves that you have a lot of potential, and when you're lucky, the heavenly God will reward you with spiritual liquid." Chapter 1705 Face Slapping Round 6-6. Chapter 1705 Face Slapping Round 6-6. Feng Wu said, "So you're saying?" Instead of answering her, Little Phoenix asked, "Do you know who the heavenly God is?" Feng Wu shook her head, but she had a vague idea. Little Phoenix said, "The heavenly God is the current ruler of this continent." Feng Wu said, "Well, that sounds impressive. Although, her beautiful master used to be the ruler of this continent as well." Little Phoenix said, "Do you know that when you made 3 breakthroughs in a row, you connected with the law of nature, and the heavenly God sensed you?" Feng Wu looked perplexed. Little Phoenix said, "The heavenly God is already aware of your existence." Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Little Phoenix said, I have no idea how lucky you can be. The heavenly god was pleased, so he rewarded you with a bottle of spiritual liquid. Couldn't you feel it? Feng Wu said, I just felt very nice. It was like basking in the sun after taking a shower, so languid and so comfortable. Little Phoenix said, that was it. You absorbed most of the spiritual liquid, and I absorbed a little. The last bit is in this bowl. Feng Wu said, are we going to take it just like that? Little Phoenix said, the spiritual essence is valuable to us, but to the heavenly god, it's just daily drinking water. Would you remember every bottle of water you give to some random person? Feng Wu said, well, Little Phoenix, not every person that makes 3 breakthroughs in a row will get that reward. It all depends on the heavenly god's mood. Apparently, you're very lucky today. Feng Wu chuckled. What a pity. If we can get some spiritual liquid of an advanced spiritual beast, maybe we can turn that horse into a spiritual beast as well. Hey, what's wrong? Little Phoenix was baffled when it heard those words. It stopped what it was doing and stared at Feng Wu with an indescribable look on its face. Feng Wu asked, what's wrong? Little Phoenix asked, do you not know? Feng Wu asked, know what? Little Phoenix said, do you not know that the original form of the ruler of this continent is a spiritual beast? Feng Wu looked perplexed. Little Phoenix said, although I don't know what kind of spiritual beast it is, it definitely is one. That's why I said that you're very lucky. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Little Phoenix said, you were saying that you want to help the horse become a spiritual beast. After that, you made 3 breakthroughs in a row. You're so lucky that the heavenly god showed you his favor and gave you some spiritual liquid. Are you sure you're not his illegitimate daughter or something? Feng Wu cleared her throat. Little Phoenix said, it can't be just a coincidence. I'm not buying it. Feng Wu said, I'm still trying to digest it myself. She still felt lightheaded, because the series of events was simply too big a coincidence. Just then, Feng Wu heard the sound of weapons clashing with each other, so she immediately stopped talking and shushed Little Phoenix as well. It finally occurred to her that there was a battle happening above her head. Feng Wu asked, are they still here? Little Phoenix nodded. Yes, they're still fighting. Feng Wu said, I didn't hear them just then. Little Phoenix said grumpily, that doesn't mean they weren't there. I set up a soundproof formation before to block out the sound. Chapter 1706 Face Slapping, Round 6-7. Chapter 1706 Face Slapping, Round 6-7. Feng Wu was baffled for a moment. Little Phoenix had used that skill before, which meant that it wasn't all that useful. You don't sound so confident, Feng Wu said curiously. Little Phoenix said, hey, mind your words. Feng Wu cleared her throat. Little Phoenix said, our most important task now is to see what's going on outside, right? Forget about how confident I sound already. Feng Wu scratched her head. You have a point. She and Little Phoenix lay flat on their stomachs and looked out through a gap in the wall. One look and Feng Wu's eyes widened. She then turned to Little Phoenix. Isn't that the younger prince? After Sapphiro offended Feng Wu, the younger prince had arrived with gifts to apologize. Feng Wu remembered the gifts, which were all quite impressive. Thus, the younger prince had left quite a good impression on Feng Wu. Little Phoenix nodded. It really is him. He wears white, and so do his guards. The other group is pursuing them. If someone on the grassland tried to kill the younger prince, his brother would be the biggest suspect. Seeing the black headbands that were identical to the 1-7 war, Feng Wu was convinced that the men in black were sent by the older prince. Right now, there were over a dozen men in black, but the white side only had 10 people left, including the younger prince. The men in black all seemed to be in high spirits and good shape, while the younger prince's men were almost all wounded, and some were badly injured. Master Hyde, the captain of the guards, pushed the younger prince in Feng Wu's direction. He had no idea that Feng Wu was hiding in the cave. All he wanted was to hide the prince. Whoosh! Feng Wu watched as the younger prince rolled into the cave and stopped by her feet. The prince stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu also stared at him. Little Phoenix almost exploded. It wanted to kick the prince. Why was this man so annoying? The two of them had been hiding safely here, and could walk out when this battle was over. But this prince just showed up. You! Get out of here! Little Phoenix didn't care who he was. Feng Wu shook her head at the bird. Little Phoenix was infuriated. We hid here first, and we set up the formation to hide our energy. He's exposed us by entering this cave. Soon, the men in black will surround this place and catch us. I'm so mad at him. The prince had a guilty look in his eyes. He had never thought that this would happen. He bowed to Feng Wu with a wry smile. I'm so sorry. I had no idea that you were hiding here. Otherwise, I wouldn't have brought you harm. After checking the situation outside, the prince turned to Feng Wu with a wry smile. This is my own trouble, and I can't bring you into this. Don't worry. I'm leaving now. Feng Wu looked at him. When she last saw him, he was handsome, gentle, and as civilized as any well-taught teenager from the South. Chapter 1707 Face Slapping, Round 6-8. Chapter 1707. Face Slapping, Round 6-8. But right now, his ragged white robe was covered in blood, and he looked a mess. After some hesitation, Feng Wu asked, Are you and your brother the only princes of the Sinal grassland? The young prince didn't know why Feng Wu asked that, but he still nodded with a smile. That's right. We're my father's only sons. Little Phoenix snorted. Not necessarily. Your chieftain Sinal is still in the prime of his life. The prince smiled bitterly and hesitated. Little Phoenix said, You're about to die. There's no better time than this to tell the truth. Why are you still holding back? Feng Wu realized that he was hiding something, so she gave the prince a half-smile. Would your older brother try to kill you if your father hadn't given his tacit approval? The prince gritted his teeth and narrowed his eyes. There were things that he didn't want to think about, because if he did, he would fall into an abyss. But she was right. He was about to die, so why should he hold anything back? He said quietly, My father is ill. I'm afraid he won't be able to have any more sons. Feng Wu nodded. That explained it. No wonder the older prince could make up his mind and try to kill his brother. Are you interested in becoming the next chieftain Sinal? Feng Wu grinned at him. He looked at Feng Wu as if she had gone mad. Was something wrong with his ears, or had Feng Wu lost her mind? He had been running for his life a moment before, and the next second, he was asked if he was interested in becoming the next chieftain. He smiled bitterly. Princess Feng, isn't that a bit far-fetched? Feng Wu waved her hands impatiently. Far-fetched or not, just tell me if you're interested in that position. Yes or no? He was going to die anyway, so what was there to be afraid of? The prince forgot about his forbearance and pretense at that moment. He stared at Feng Wu with piercing eyes. Who wouldn't want to sit on the throne? I've dreamed about it because only when I'm on it can I stop fearing for my life. The young prince looked into Feng Wu's eyes and spoke in a serious tone. Feng Wu said casually, What if I told you that I can make that happen? How will you repay me? Make that happen. The prince was amused. Miss Feng Yu? He didn't believe her at all. If it was Master Teacher Si Baisi who was saying this, the prince would believe every word. However, she was only a princess of the Junwu Empire. What made her think she could do that? Smiling wryly, he waved his hands. Princess Feng, I'm going out now. I won't put you in any danger. After that, he turned to leave the cave. Feng Wu had been observing the prince this whole time. He was kind, mild-tempered, and upright. It would be a blessing for the grassland if he could become the next chieftain. In contrast, the people of the grassland would suffer if the cruel and despotic older prince inherited the throne. But she wanted to help the young prince mainly for personal reasons. The older prince had sent an assassin to kill her, and she held a grudge against him for that. She decided that she would take what he wanted the most from him. What did he want the most? Needless to say, it was the throne. Chapter 1708 Face Slapping, Round 6-9. Chapter 1708. Face Slapping, Round 6-9. Thus, Feng Wu wanted the older prince to watch as she helped his brother take the throne. She was going to make this his biggest regret. Only then would he realize that he had messed with the wrong person. Wait. Feng Wu gave the young prince a grumpy look and pointed at the back of the cave. The exit is over there. What? The young prince looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Feng Wu snapped. Fine, I know you don't believe me, but you'll soon see my capability. Her fingers moved slightly as she spoke, and she flicked them in the direction of the wall. The prince looked at her with a wry smile. This was a granite cave, and the walls were very hard. The idea of leaving through some underground tunnel was preposterous. He had examined the rock as soon as he entered the cave. However, to his disbelief, a tunnel appeared at Feng Wu's command, and it ran very deep. He had no idea where it led to, but it was still a tunnel out of here. It seemed newly made, and there were signs that it had been burned around it. The walls of the tunnel were charred as well. The prince stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. What's going on here? Feng Wu shrugged. Unlike you, I make sure that I have an exit route when I'm hiding. After she and Little Phoenix hid here, she had to work on her breakthrough, so she told the bird to open up an exit tunnel for them. It was true that they were surrounded by granite, but Little Phoenix could spit fire. It was a matter of minutes before the rock burnt down. With its abnormal flame, Little Phoenix opened up a tunnel for them. But the walls of the tunnel were still very hot. Feng Wu pushed him toward the tunnel. Go now. Those men are closing in. Go now before they catch you. I'm not leaving without you. I can't leave a girl behind while I run away. I brought you into this. If we're going to die, I'll die first. The prince stubbornly held Feng Wu's hand. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Little Phoenix had been holding a grudge against the prince, but seeing his persistence, it began to like him better. Feng Wu said, Fine, if you want to stay and watch, stay. But stand over there, and don't get in my way. The prince looked at her in bewilderment, and wondered what she was going to do at such a critical moment. What Feng Wu was about to do was quite simple. She wanted to weaken the enemy as much as possible, so she was going to blow up as many men in black as she could. She quickly buried a few things in the cave. An explosive formation soon took shape. The prince looked at her and felt perplexed. What did you bury there? Will it work? Little Phoenix stuck out its chest. Of course it will. Just wait and see. But the prince wasn't convinced, and he reminded Feng Wu. Those men are very capable. The weakest are level 3 spiritual elders, and the stronger ones are level 5. As for their captain, he's a spiritual lord. Feng Wu didn't say anything since she had guessed as much. The prince was anxious at first, but he gradually relaxed. He had already accepted the fact that he was going to die. If he could make it out, it would be his lucky day, but if he couldn't, he smiled bitterly. That was practically the inevitable outcome. Chapter 1709 Face Slapping, Round 7-1. Chapter 1709. Face Slapping Round 7-1. Let's go. After setting up the trap, Feng Wu ran toward the tunnel, dragging the prince along with her. The temperature inside the tunnel was very high, but luckily, Feng Wu was fast enough. She moved like the wind, and the bottom of her feet barely touched the ground. The heat didn't affect her at all. Captain, the prince is hiding in the cave. One of the men in black reported to the captain. The secret guards had a strict hierarchy. The captain, for instance, was of the same level as 7, which made him the leader of the team. His name was 6. Captain 6 smirked. Does he think he can run away from us just by hiding there? How naive. The other man said, Captain? Captain 6 said, the ground is granite, which is very hard. It can't be hacked open or melted down, not without an abnormal flame. Heh. Another team member said, so the young prince has just run into a trap of his own making, which makes our job a lot easier. The other team members all laughed. This mission had turned out to be easier than they had expected. They had thought that there would be a fierce battle, but the prince turned out to be very naive. The mole had lured him out here without much difficulty, and he had only brought a few guards with him. Naturally, the older prince wouldn't waste such a good opportunity. Captain Six waved his hand. Come. Let's find the prince, kill him, and finish the job. We can then go back to claim our reward. Great. Everyone was excited. This was going to be a great achievement. With the younger prince gone, the older prince would have no rival left for the throne. They couldn't wait to claim their reward. Captain Six wasn't a reckless man. He was pretty cautious. With a wave of his hand, the remaining 20 men in black spread out and circled the cave. He then made a hand gesture. One of the men shouted, "Your Highness, come out. We won't kill you." There was no sound from inside. Right now, the young prince's guards had all been killed off, and their bodies littered the ground. Their blood painted the ground red, creating a wretched scene. One of the men in white moved his fingers slightly. He was none other than the captain of the younger prince's guards. He couldn't move anymore, but he was looking at the cave. He had pushed the younger prince into the cave. Tears ran down the captain's cheeks. "Your Highness, I was trying to save you, but I sent you to your death." Tears and blood covered his face. Right now, all that the men in black cared about was the younger prince in the cave. After all, it wasn't every day that they could achieve something as great as catching the prince. One of them shouted into the cave, "Your Highness, are you really not coming out? If not, we're going to set a fire." There was still no response. Six frowned and made a hand gesture. "Go have a look," he said. "Captain, let me go." "Captain, let me." "Captain, pick me." Immediately everyone volunteered. They all knew that they might not have such an opportunity again. Six cast a stern look at his team members. "Everyone follow me." Chapter 1710 Face Slapping Round 7-2. Chapter 1710 Face Slapping Round 7-2. "Yes, Captain," the team members replied in unison. The younger prince's captain of the guards watched in despair as Captain Six led his team into the cave. "My prince." Six walked into the cave and found it incredibly dim inside. That wasn't right. It was very bright outside and light could enter the cave, so why was it so dark? More importantly, where was the younger prince? The cave was no more than 10 square meters in size, so where could the younger prince hide? However, at that moment, Six suddenly had a bad feeling, and he shouted, "Out! Everybody out!" But it was too late. To claim the reward, the 20 or so men in black had jumped into the cave without a second thought. They moved too fast for anyone to stop them. Therefore, when Six told them to get out, the last man was still at the entrance and blocked the way. Rumble! There was the terrifying sound of an explosion. "Ah!" And people screamed. The younger prince's captain watched with wide-open eyes. What happened? A massive explosion took place in the cave. Flames sprang up and heavy smoke rose into the sky. The black smoke covered the sky like dark clouds. The ground shook and people's ears buzzed. The ceiling of the cave shattered, and the rock shards rained down. They were like a storm of bullets. Luckily, the younger prince's captain, who was lying on the ground, shielded himself with a dead man's body in time. The dead body was almost shredded to pieces, but the captain was unharmed. At the same time, Captain Six and his members weren't as lucky. It had never occurred to them that things could go so wrong, just as they were about to wrap things up. Since the explosion took place inside the cave, the impact was incredible. 10 men were instantly killed. The surviving ones were all severely injured. No one was unharmed. As for Captain Six, he had been the one to set off the explosion. In fact, Feng Wu had considered this possibility when she set up the mines. Catching the prince was such a big achievement that he would never share it with other people. He would do it himself, so he would definitely be the first to come down here. Feng Wu had studied Six's physique and gait, with which she was able to calculate the possible route he would take. One had to admit that Feng Wu's deductive ability was terrifyingly accurate. Because of his greed, Six had come down here to catch the prince himself. And he had led the team himself. Therefore, he was right at the center of the explosion when the impact hit him. He bore almost 90% of the impact. Moreover, Feng Wu had buried bombs not only in the ground, but in the walls as well. Once the bombs in the ground went off, it would set off a chain reaction. Apart from the bombs, there were steel balls as well. The steel balls flew everywhere. When the bombs were detonated, the cave turned into a living hell. Cough. 6 survived, but he was badly injured. His right eye had been pierced by a steel ball, and he couldn't stop the bleeding. Chapter 1711 Face Slapping, Round 7-3. Chapter 1711 Face Slapping, Round 7-3. His right hand was covered in blood, and his arms were charred. He had countless cuts and bruises all over his body. He was covered by dust, and one could barely recognize him. He didn't know what to say. He was furious. It had never occurred to him that the prince would do such a thing. Very impressive. He chose to bring us down with him at the last moment. 6 was then caught in a fit of coughing. Find the prince's body. He managed to sit down by the wall. Although the team had suffered great casualties, it was a cost he was willing to pay to kill the younger prince. The rocks overhead had crumbled in the explosion, letting light into the place. They were able to see things clearly. Fighting back the pain, the team searched for the prince's body. They had thought that it would be an easy task, but they soon realized that it wasn't. Wait, where's his body? That can't be right. We can only find our dead brothers. Where's the prince? This doesn't make sense. How can a body disappear? Was it blown away? No. Even if it was, there should still be some bones or flesh left, but there's nothing. They finally began to panic. 6 sat up abruptly and stared at his team members in disbelief. He's gone? How is that possible? He then went to search for the prince himself. However, no matter how many times he searched, the prince's body was still nowhere to be found. How incredible! Just then a team member cried out, "Look! What's this?" Immediately, everyone turned in his direction. One look and 6 eyes popped. Because there was a passage. A passage with an opening big enough for a person to enter. Since they couldn't find the prince's body, there was only one explanation. Did he escape through this tunnel? Someone cried out. 6 spat out a mouthful of blood. If that speculation was correct, what did that make him? A fool? Captain, what now? Shall we go after him? The other surviving team members were also on the verge of breaking down. They had been so confident in their victory. But then the explosion happened. And the prince had escaped at the last moment. Damn it. Let's go. 6 supported himself with his sword and rushed into the tunnel. After the explosion, there were only 10 men in black left. They were all injured to some degree, and most of them were badly injured. But no one said a word. Driven by their rage, they ran off at top speed, as if fueled by angry flames. They had no idea how long the tunnel was. 6 was so furious that he forgot about his pain. After a while, look, there he is. One of the men spotted the younger prince. He even paused and looked back at them. Chapter 1712 Face Slapping, Round 7-4. Chapter 1712 Face Slapping, Round 7-4. Although they were very far apart, they could see that it was indeed the younger prince. It's really him. Guys, get him. Everyone, 6 included, immediately charged out like madmen. Run! 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 Meanwhile, the younger prince. He looked at Feng Wu with a complicated expression in his eyes. He wanted to say something but hesitated. Feng Wu gave him a grumpy look. What is it? Taking a deep breath, the prince fought back his excitement, looked at Feng Wu and asked, How did you do it? He had seen with his own eyes what happened. He had smiled bitterly when Feng Wu buried things in the ground, because he didn't think that it would work. He had still been smiling bitterly when Feng Wu set up the formation, for he didn't think the ad hoc formation would work. When Feng Wu pulled him into the tunnel, he was still smiling bitterly, because he didn't think that they would make it. However, they had still been running. When Feng Wu then told him to lie down on his stomach, facing the cave, he then saw the terrifying explosion. Heavy smoke rose, the ground shook, and the tunnel almost collapsed. 6. who had been fiercely chasing them, was almost burned into charcoal. Over half the assassins were killed. The younger prince was speechless. He looked at Feng Wu with glowing eyes. How did you do it? What he deemed a miracle was only a mundane act to Feng Wu. She shrugged and said casually, "Didn't you seen it for yourself?" The prince said, "The bombs might have hurt the other men, but how did it break through Captain Six's defense? He's a spiritual lord." Feng Wu smiled. "Spiritual lords are indeed as unshakable as mountains to us. But are they really?" She then grinned. "A common bomb may not be able to hurt him, but what about 2, 3, or 7? If 7 wasn't enough, the formation amplified the impact. And if that still wasn't enough, there were also the steel balls. And if those still weren't enough, an enclosed space like that can amplify the explosion several times over. That's to say, it was an explosion equivalent to one with 10 times as many steel balls," said Feng Wu. The prince stared at Feng Wu with an open mouth. Feng Wu smiled. That should be enough to fill the gap between a spiritual elder and a spiritual lord. Moreover, Six was right at the center of the explosion. He was bound to be injured. What a pity. If Six had realized it a little later, he wouldn't have had time to activate his defense. If that had been the case, Six would be a charred corpse now. The younger prince didn't know what to say. Although Six was injured by the explosion, he can still fight. Will he find this tunnel? The younger prince was concerned. Feng Wu said, "Of course he will." The prince gave Feng Wu a strange look. "If that's the case, we should run now." Feng Wu gave him an enigmatic smile. "Hold on." Without further explanation, Feng Wu began to bustle around in the tunnel. If she could set a trap for Six in the cave, why couldn't she do it again in the tunnel? Chapter 1713 Face Slapping Round 7-5. Chapter 1713. Face Slapping Round 7-5. Seeing that Feng Wu was busy burying bombs and setting up a formation again, the prince was amazed. "Miss Feng, are you?" Feng Wu nodded and resumed working. The prince asked, "Will we have enough time?" Little Phoenix, who had been helping Feng Wu bury the bombs, threw a dirty look at him. "We will if you stop distracting Xiao Wu." The prince immediately covered his mouth with his hands and spoke no more, fearing that he might disturb Feng Wu. Feng Wu rolled her eyes at Little Phoenix. The bird was quite rude to the prince. Luckily, the prince had a mild temper. But he was still a prince of the grassland. Little Phoenix said grumpily, "If it wasn't for him, we would never be in such danger. Of course I blame him." Humph. The sweet-tempered prince only smiled bitterly when he heard Little Phoenix's accusation. Earlier, it took Feng Wu a few minutes to get the bombs and the formation ready. But it only took Feng Wu a minute this time. The prince looked concerned. "Will this work?" Feng Wu patted the dust off her hands and rose to her feet. "I don't have enough time, so this will do. What a pity. If I had a little more time, I'm sure I could finish Six off here. Shit, they saw us. Run." She then grabbed the prince and started running. Six and his men had seen the prince, so of course they wouldn't lose him again. "Go!" Six led the team. The other men in black picked up speed and sprang off after him. They were so hot-headed that it never occurred to them that they could be ambushed. How naive. Six and his men soon arrived at the spot where Feng Wu had set the bombs. 3, 2, 1 boom. Feng Wu counted down. And she was right. The next second, thump, there was the sound of a massive explosion. The tunnel was an enclosed space as well, so the impact wasn't any weaker than the first one. Immediately flames surged up. There was heavy smoke. The ground shook. The walls of the tunnel cracked as they watched. Rumble. The tunnel began to collapse. Turning around, Feng Wu saw that Six and his men were buried under the falling rock as black smoke rose over them. Was it over? No, it wasn't. Feng Wu's traps always came in 2s and 3s. When the prince stopped to look back, Feng Wu yanked at him. "Keep running," the prince said excitedly. "Sixes. The explosion isn't over yet. Run." Feng Wu didn't have time for this. She grabbed the prince's hand and ran as fast as she could, dragging him along with her. Just then, rumble. The sounds of an explosion resonated in the tunnel, seemingly without end. In the wake of the noise, the tunnel began to collapse at a dangerous speed. Run! Fengwu tugged at the prince. 6 might be able to withstand it, but someone like you is sure to burn up. The prince finally realized how dangerous the situation was, and picked up his pace. In the end, Fengwu practically picked him up and lifted him off the ground. The collapse was getting closer and closer. Little Phoenix flapped its wings and yelled, "Quickly! We're almost at the exit. 500 meters, 400 meters, 300 meters. Chapter 1714 Face Slapping, Round 7-6. Chapter 1714, Face Slapping, Round 7-6. Led by Fengwu, the prince calmed down despite how tense the situation was. In the midst of the flames and explosions, he found the decisive girl so beautiful. How nice would it be if she could stay with him forever? There was an expectant look in his eyes. Thump! They only had less than 100 meters to run, but Fengwu realized that they wouldn't make it. The flames behind them were scorching her back. It was very close. Therefore, she picked up the prince and hurled him forward like a stone. Thump! Once the prince flew out of the cave, Fengwu kicked the wall, and with the momentum, she shot out like an arrow. The moment she was out of the cave, the tunnel collapsed with a deafening sound. Fengwu lay on her stomach and panted. The prince lay next to her. They looked at each other and chuckled. "We made it out." The prince couldn't believe it. "Gosh, we actually made it. We're not dead." Tears welled up in his eyes. He had lost all hope when his men died one after another. He had been ready to die himself, but he had run into someone as amazing as Fengwu. She was a miracle. Smiling, the prince kept his gaze on Fengwu, and the longer he looked at her, the more amazing she became to him. Who would have thought that Fengwu, a spiritual elder, could kill a spiritual lord? "You really are." Taking a deep breath, the prince didn't try to hide the affection in his eyes. "You're the most wonderful girl I've ever met. You're great. Miss Feng. Fengwu had no idea what was on his mind. She thought that he wanted to thank her, so she waved him off. "It's no big deal. I'm trying to take down your brother, and helping you is just a byproduct. But you saved my life. I don't know how I can repay you. Miss Feng, I wonder if you..." Fengwu said impatiently, Fine. Repay me however you want, I won't stop you. But we have to get out of this alive first." The prince looked confused. "Aren't we safe now?" "Safe?" Fengwu found the question idiotic. "Do you think 6 is dead?" The prince blinked, looking very innocent. "He's not." Fengwu said. "No wonder your brother has had the upper hand this entire time. Bro, you're so naive." She patted him on the shoulder. To her, the prince was a teenager as naive as Feng Xiaoqi. The prince didn't like the way Fengwu addressed him. He didn't want to be her bro. But the most important question was, "Are you saying that 6 isn't dead?" The prince frowned. Fengwu nodded. "Of course he isn't. Spiritual lords are more capable than you can imagine. It's almost impossible to kill someone a whole stage more advanced than you are." Chapter 1715 Face Slapping, Round 7-7. Chapter 1715, Face Slapping, Round 7-7. What Fengwu didn't say was that she had messed with 3 spiritual lords in a row today. The young prince nodded. "Spiritual lords really are very capable. Miss Feng, you're amazing. I think you're the only person in history who can defeat a spiritual lord when you're only a spiritual elder." He gave her a thumbs up as he spoke. Fengwu only smiled wryly. Before she could speak, she heard some noise behind them. Turning around, Fengwu saw what it was, and her pupils contracted. A chill ran down her spine. The noise came from the center of the area where Fengwu had buried the bombs. 6 and his men were buried underneath, but now something stirred. The dust and rocks shook slightly. Then, a hand covered in blackened skin stuck out. The young prince followed Fengwu's gaze, and what he saw almost frightened him to death. "Gosh, you're right. 6 really isn't dead." The prince frowned. Fengwu gave him a bitter smile. Of course she had hoped that the explosion would kill 6, since he was a threat to her life. But it turned out that a spiritual lord was as tough as the name suggested. The guy was harder to kill than a cockroach. Even after 2 explosions, he still wouldn't die. Fengwu thought it was a pity. Just then, the young prince marched toward where the sound was coming from. Fengwu stopped him. "What are you doing?" The prince's eyes shone bravely. After the 2 explosions, Six has to be badly injured. He's on his last breath, so this is the best time to kill him. Fengwu didn't know what to say. The prince looked at Fengwu with a solemn expression in his eyes. "Miss Feng, it's my turn to protect you now." He then pulled Fengwu behind him, picked up his sword, and was going to strike the man. Before Fengwu knew it, rumble! There was a violent fluctuation of spiritual essence. Fengwu's stomach lurched. She couldn't be any more familiar with that sound, because it had only just happened 3 times before to her, and she was very sensitive to it. She turned to Little Phoenix subconsciously. The bird nodded at Fengwu. That was to say, she was correct. Six, whose life she had made so miserable, had just had a breakthrough. Fengwu was so frustrated that she almost cried. Meanwhile, the naive prince was still charging forward. Fengwu sighed in resignation. Run! It finally occurred to him what had just happened. Did Six? Fengwu was almost in tears. He was dying, but luck is on his side, and he just made a breakthrough. Do you know how difficult it is for a spiritual lord to make a breakthrough? And I've just helped him do that. The younger prince was speechless. Just then, a black head rose out of the debris, and the black eyes which stared at Fengwu had a strange light in them. Fengwu didn't know what to say. Run! Fengwu grabbed the prince and ran as fast as she could. This was bad. The prince was almost in tears as well. How could this happen? Six was almost dead, but now? Fengwu said. I thought the same. But luck is on his side. So what can we do? I can only hope that he'll make just one breakthrough. Chapter 1716 Face Slapping, Round 7, 8. Chapter 1716. Face Slapping, Round 7, 8. The prince mumbled as he ran with Fengwu. Isn't that all we can do? Make one breakthrough at a time? Flying alongside Fengwu, Little Phoenix glanced at the prince. How ignorant. The bird had always despised the poor prince, but the latter was very sweet-tempered. Even with this, he still wasn't angry. He was only curious. What do you mean? Can people make 2 breakthroughs in a row? Little Phoenix raised its chin proudly. Of course they can. I've seen people make 3 breakthroughs in a row. The prince stared at Little Phoenix in disbelief. Little Phoenix felt rather superior to see how ignorant the prince was. So it said proudly, You know next to nothing. The prince said, Can people do that? I don't believe it. Little Phoenix snickered. Why not? You're looking right at that person. He was looking right at the person. The prince looked at the bird. Is it you? Little Phoenix almost choked. It then rolled its eyes at the prince. I told you already it's a person. Do I look like a person to you? What on earth are you thinking? It scolded the poor prince mercilessly. The prince was used to its attitude, so he didn't mind it at all. He then looked at Fengwu. Miss Feng, is it you? Fengwu didn't try to hide anything as she nodded and said, Yes. The prince thought at first that Little Phoenix was bragging, but now that he saw that it was true, he stared at her in disbelief. Really? Did you really make 3 breakthroughs in a row? How's that even possible? That can't be possible. Fengwu rolled her eyes at him. Why not? She had done it more than once. But Fengwu didn't spend any time explaining it to him, because right now, their top priority was to run away. Just run, Fengwu warned the prince. Six is still making his breakthrough, and his injuries will recover a little in the process. If he catches up with us, we won't be able to run away. The prince nodded. He had never looked so serious. Fengwu said, Let's run down the hill. Six won't be able to kill us when we get to the campsite. Fengwu was screaming inwardly. Six was becoming stronger, and they were now in more danger than at the beginning. Slopes and rivers kept getting in their way. But they couldn't stop Fengwu. She made a beeline for the campsite, dragging the prince along with her. They climbed the slopes and jumped over rivers. The prince learned a lot of tricks. Small stones could be stuck into a cliff wall and be used as steps. And those small stones could also be used to slow down their descent from a cliff as well. And they could use tricks to cross the river as well. Fengwu had no idea how far she had run. She just knew that she had to run as fast as she could. Even a second's delay might get all of them killed. If Fengwu was all by herself, she could have made it out of the mountain already, but the prince slowed her down. 6 was like a blade hanging over their heads, and they had no idea when it would fall. Chapter 1717 Face Slapping, Round 7-9. Chapter 1717 Face Slapping, Round 7-9. Although the prince was a man, he wasn't as capable or as strong as Fengwu. No matter how hard he tried to run, there was a limit to his strength. Turning her head, Fengwu saw that the prince was drained of color. Even his lips were bloodless, and he seemed he was about to pass out. Fengwu had to stop. "Are you all right?" Fengwu stared at him. The prince was too busy panting to say a word. He was only able to breathe after a long while. "I can still run." "I can." Fengwu frowned. "Are you sure?" The prince nodded. Fengwu then handed him a bottle each of spiritual essence potion and strength potion. "Drink them." Little Phoenix stomped its foot. Fengwu almost used up her potions last time, and she hadn't had time to replenish them yet. Those 2 bottles were very valuable. How could she have given them away just like that? Little Phoenix glared at Fengwu. "They can save your life at a critical moment." The 2 bottles of potion were like a long-awaited rain for the prince, and he drank them up as soon as he took them. He looked guiltily at Fengwu when he heard what the bird said. "Miss Feng." Fengwu impatiently waved him off. "They're yours, so just drink them." Pursing his lips, the prince made up his mind that if he could get out of this alive, he would marry Fengwu. She would be his official wife. "Miss Feng, Before the prince could say another word, Fengwu asked directly, "How much of your strength have you recovered?" "About half my strength." "Then stop talking and run." Fengwu rolled her eyes at the prince and dragged him away. They hadn't run fast enough earlier, and had only covered a third of the distance so far. "It's been 15 minutes. Little Phoenix mumbled as it flew. 6 has probably finished his breakthrough already. Fengwu gritted her teeth and didn't say a word. Talking would only use up more of her energy. Little Phoenix was still worried, so it looked back. What it saw almost frightened it to death. It swooped down and yelled at Fengwu. "Damn it! 6 is chasing you, and he's running very fast. He's like a streak of lightning." The prince felt his knees buckle, and he almost fainted. Fengwu stiffened and looked distressed. "That's 2 minutes earlier than I expected." Fengwu frowned. "This won't do. He'll catch up with us, and none of us will be able to get away." The prince gritted his teeth and gave it some thought. He then looked into Fengwu's eyes and said, "Miss Feng, just leave me here." Fengwu frowned at him. The prince said, "You're innocent in this, and I pulled you into this because I was careless. And now, I'm holding you back. Otherwise, you would have been able to run away on your own." Fengwu didn't speak. Because he was right. Without him she could survive this. After all, this wasn't the first time she had fought a spiritual lord. She had made 7 and the demon chimpanzee miserable, hadn't she? The prince had a solemn look in his eyes when he said, "So just leave me here." He then bowed at her. Fengwu didn't know what to say. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.